Welcome everybody to Give Me a Break. We're here to talk about redistricting, the good, the bad, the ugly, kind of broad scope here. We're going to talk about the implications, whether it was legal, whether it wasn't legal, what's going to happen going forward. It's good for the Democrats, good for the Republicans, bad for both, who's going to benefit and why, and all this good jazz. So we're going to get into it today. More of a discussion than actually a heated 2v2 or anything. So let's get first. I'll let everybody introduce themselves and give an opening. We'll start with you, Tyler.
Average debate enjoyer. Generally right about everything. Never wrong. One time I thought I was wrong. I was mistaken. So there's that. Everything. If anyone disagrees with me, just apologies in advance for making you look silly. And yeah.
You have any opening thoughts on redistricting?
Oh, you just said introduce ourselves. I'm pro gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is a fantastic thing. All the end result is we have more competitive districts. The only people that don't like gerrymandering are those that are hyper partisan. Since I am a moderate, and a moderate by definition is somebody that reaches over the aisle, considers the other side's views almost as often as their own, I don't give a fuck which side has more power as long as at the end of the day we have compromise.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's go to you, Castle.
Sure. So my name is Castle. You can find me online under CastleGuard YT on Twitter, YouTube, etc. Leaning center left on most, if not all, issues. And, it's a shame Tyler calls himself some type of moderate, because most moderates disagree that gerrymandering is some good thing that we have going on. And I think gerrymandering that's going on in the country today is not good for the long term of the voters. I think that we're already seeing how it starts to turn into more partisan districts, how people start to really enclave themselves in certain parts of the state that really only represent one view. So I think gerrymandering is not a good thing. I think the legality of it is something that I'm sure we'll discuss today, but it seems to be that according to the courts these days that they're fine with certain types of gerrymandering. So it is what it is there. I think that if they want to destroy the country, that's fine if you think it's legal to. So I just think that gerrymandering in and of itself is something that everybody kind of understands is something we should turn away from. But for some reason, our politicians want to take advantage of it and exploit it, whether it's for liberals or for conservatives. I think it's something that should be abolished.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mullally.
Hi, I'm Ryan Mullally. I'm a former teacher, current lawyer, and I've litigated every level of the U.S. judicial system, including the U.S. Supreme Court. And I'm celebrating 3,000 subs on YouTube today. So we just ticked over. So happy 3K subs day to me and to chat. So that's great. Look, I am not a fan of gerrymandering. I think in the abstract, like if I was asked, is gerrymandering good or bad? I would say bad. The problem is there is no real alternative because any alternative that would be meaningful would be imposed on the states by the federal government. But in fact, the actual problem here is the nationalization of our politics. In a world where states had the proper prominent role in our federalism, we wouldn't be as worried about whether or not they were gerrymandering. It wouldn't matter as much. In our current situation where we've made every issue national, and we no longer really have a state-driven, local-driven politics, gerrymandering is going to be the way to go. And while I'm not a big fan of gerrymandering, it is infinitely preferable to having a cram down on certain states, which will inevitably be done by a partisan federal government, which is actually worse. So it's not that it's a good thing. It's just I'm not exactly sure what the alternative is at our present state of time. Maybe we can go back to a world where we don't have every single issue being federal, every single issue being national, and gerrymandering would be less important. But we don't live in that world. So today it seems like this is the way to go.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Tom Foley.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much anybody with a brain doesn't like gerrymandering, especially if you want to have moderation and compromise. You're pretty much always going to be against gerrymandering. There's tons of studies that show that gerrymandering tends to split demographics into more extreme positions, drives more partisan divide, and there aren't a whole lot of great options outside of it. But currently, there's somewhere, whether you want to say it's 7 or 11, there's a number of states that have gotten rid of partisan gerrymandering to an extent, or at least gotten rid of politicians doing the gerrymandering for them. Democrats in the House and the Senate have twice within the last 10 years tried getting rid of partisan gerrymandering countrywide, and it has been Republicans who have stopped it each time. It seems like it has benefited the minority a lot of times, and I do believe that it does, and I do believe that that is like beneficial to the union overall, for there to be more competition and for Republicans to still be capable of having a competitive stance within our government today. But I don't think that the current state of affairs is beneficial, and the main issue is the breaking of the norms when it comes to gerrymandering.
All right. Well, before we get going with this, 1 second, guys, I just want a quick housekeeping. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing at 8 p.m. our interview with our person who escaped from Chavez. We had to move that. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. And so, yeah, going forward with this, let's just go here. How did we get here? And Mr. Lai, you look like you were about to say something. You can go ahead.
I was going to say what norms. Like I think the first recorded gerrymander I could find was in 1788. The term was coined in like 1812. So this practice of like drawing districts for partisan gain is as old as the country. There have been efforts,
but that's not the issue that we're talking about.
Well, you said
not just gerrymandering.
You said there's a norm violation.
Yes.
So there has to be, you have to establish a norm.
I said in the current state of affairs, yes, the norm is that you don't redraw lines in the middle of right before the midterms. Normally you draw them after a census because you're normally using census data, but we didn't have a new census. It's normally every 10 years, but they decided to redraw it now because Trump asked them to redraw
No, New York did it.
Yeah,
New York redrew their maps first, and that's what started this entire thing. But just like your introduction, it's just full of dishonest, hyper-partisan bullshit. This Democrats' fake stance of trying to end gerrymandering by pushing it behind a commission and ending up having the most gerrymandered state for 15 years straight in California was always just more lying. They cannot stop lying every time they talk. Democrats just are completely dishonest. When you look at the actual numbers in California, the 2024 election, the largest disparity between House seats in the federal government versus the amount of minority party votes was in California for the 5th election in a row. So we know the most gerrymandered states are always Democrat states until now when the Civil Rights Act ended. And these are the same people pretending like they want to end gerrymandering by benefiting from their own solution.
Well, and just
gerrymandering bad or good?
Well, hold on. Let me Tom respond because he was just called dishonest now. Tom, I'm sure you have a response to that. And then Castle, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that New York just gerrymandered right before the midterm. So everything else he said was just ad hom. But the part that was actually relevant was that New York was the one who started this off. I don't know where he got that from.
Reality. Well, ad hom isn't citing California's exact election results and their exact distribution of how the minority party has House votes in the federal government. It sounds to me like you're just lying and dodging again.
Well, hold on. Let me ask you this then, Tyler.
No, the claim was about norms. No. The claim was about norms. You just went off on a bunch of random bullshit about California that had absolutely nothing to do with the claim that I made about Texas starting this. You went off and started saying New York started it, which isn't true. And then you started rambling about California that was
just
not
lying again because you made more than that claim.
Tom,
you made multiple claims.
Hold on.
Maybe I can't stop lying, bro.
Hold on. All right. Yeah, we're going to go to Mr. Lally and then Castle if you want to get here. I do have a question, though. Like, if California was the most gerrymandered, are you just saying when they went back and re-gerrymandered again to where they're now +5, that, like, it sounds like they're the most. They weren't the most because they were able to get +5 out of it, right? It seems so. Like that seems like kind of like counterintuitive to your point there, Tyler. If they're the most,
it was the largest disparity between the minority vote in any state and their state representatives in the federal House of any state in the United States. That was over a certain threshold. Like if you only have 3 or 4 votes to your state, I'm not counting that because those are small states. I'm looking at the largest states. I compared it to Texas, New York, Florida, the top 10 largest states. They were, by and large, the largest disparity between minority vote percentage and minority vote House seats.
And this is why, and this is why I think, if I'm going to, try to explain, trying to create a norm that's around like the census is kind of silly because What was happening between like 1960 and 2019 is it was unclear whether partisan gerrymandering was legal. And a lot of states, a lot of Democratic states in particular, but I'm not going to play partisan here, a lot of Republican states too, set up quote unquote neutral commissions that then were basically covers to gerrymander with some kind of political cover that they thought would withstand court scrutiny. And that's what they did. And that's how you got a map like California's or a map like New York's. And then they'll say like, oh, well, there's a norm. We have this independent commission, but the maps were laughable. This is why I think actually it's better now, because in 2019, the Supreme Court clarified that you actually are allowed, as a matter of federal constitutional law, to do partisan gerrymandering. So at least now the states are being honest with us. Like, I prefer a state of play where we're not being lied to about what the norm is and what the states are doing. I think that's better. Now, would I prefer less gerrymandering? Actually, technically, yeah. But I think it's better to have honesty about what it is and what the partisan goals are than to live in a world where states are kind of doing it behind closed doors and under cover of night, which is a shitty thing to do. And as Tyler was saying, essentially a propaganda effort.
So I'm just trying to understand the points. I know it's more of an open debate, but Tyler's saying that Democrats gerrymander the most and the worst, but then also gerrymandering is good. And then Ryan is saying that he doesn't like gerrymandering, but it's still the best way that we're appropriating how people are allowed to vote. And this could show are we saying that gerrymandering is fine, but Democrats do it more extremely, or that it's still bad, but the way that we have the system today is better than any alternative? Like, there's got to be a better way to appropriate, how people are able to vote. Like, if you look at the country today, do we think that is either more partisan or less partisan than the way lines were drawn 20, 30 years ago? I think most people would assume, or most people would agree, that the way that lines were drawn 30 years ago, even if there were still gerrymandered states, was a lot more representative of how people felt about the government than they do today, because a lot of people today, they aren't really Democrat or Republican, right? A lot more people are independent voters. So how do you address that fact?
Well, the problem is, and this is just the reason that I think there isn't a better alternative. The states are doing it to themselves. Like, if states don't want to do it, it's because their state law prevents it or because the state politicians don't want to do it. That's the only check. There's no federal check. If you wanted to fix the problem, you'd have to impose power of the federal government over the states about how they draw their maps, which theoretically could be done. But the problem there is, if you're going to have partisanship, it's much better for the states to impose partisanship on themselves than to have the federal government impose partisanship on them. And imagine how that would play out. The federal government says you've got to have a neutral commission.
You said that.
I'm trying to explain it. The federal government says you've got to have a neutral commission. You draw a map. People litigate it. They go to court. It's going to be partisan litigation. Then you're going to get a federal judge who's going to say, no, that's a bad map. No, that's a good map. And they're going to decide. And you're going to have people cramming down on the states through this external process, which is going to be even worse. It's going to lead to even more room for accusations of monkeying with the system and people not having the room to govern themselves than we currently have. This is why people are so upset about the VRA outcome, because, on both sides, they feel like it's the courts monkeying with the process. I don't think that actually works. I think that you can't. If we're hyper-partisan right now, you can't rely on a hyper-partisan party to come up with a system to end gerrymandering that's not going to end up being itself a gerrymander. It's just going to be a gerrymander with extra steps, and that's worse. And it's worse because it's national. It's worse because it's federal. If we are where we are, I think we're better off doing it locally.
But there are states that have independent commissions that help set up or help draw those maps. Why couldn't you just have the federal government say, each state, you should have an independent commission here. We're not going to tell you who's on that commission. You just have to have one in order to draw more fair representation. You can decide how you want to do that, but the commission itself is something that could be set up federally. Would that make sense or no?
Well, you could do it, but let's say they set it up and it's unfair, because why would the state that wants to gerrymander set up a fair commission? Then you go to court, right? And then a federal judge tells them your commission's unfair, your map's bad. This is why it doesn't work, because either it's toothless or it's enforceable. And if it's enforceable, you're going to end up having it enforced by creative lawyers like me who are going to go to court and just use this as a partisan tool to get what they want. Which is, it's the sad, but it's the reality of how this goes.
But are current independent state commissions viewed that way. I don't think there have ever been people that said they're partisan.
Well, they're
otherwise,
not. Some of them are, but they're
Tyler
not. But more importantly, they're not imposed by federal law. They're imposed by state law. So the people in those states chose them. It's not something that is done to them by other states. Like, imagine in our current partisan environment, if the current government, I'm talking about the Trump administration, Congress, right, as currently composed, they nuke the filibuster tomorrow and they go, you know what? We're imposing a gerrymander rule. And here's our rule about what gerrymandering is. How many Democrats do you think trust that rule?
very few, if none.
Right? And if the Democrats win and do the same shit, how many Republicans trust that rule?
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally get that premise.
It's unworkable.
I get that premise.
But there's already like 18 to 20 different states that are that have already banned partisan gerrymandering at this point. And then there's like 11 states that specifically have some sort of nonpartisan commissions that are already doing this.
On a state
I guess this is the question, right? That it seems to be coming up here, right? Because you just said that you have 30 states. I could be misquoting you, but a lot of states. Let's go like to have nonpartisan. They want like nonpartisan gerrymandering, right? And then I've heard what Mr. Lowry's here saying, and I'm kind of somewhere in between. How do you ensure they're nonpartisan? Like, say you're in Texas, right? Because I live in Texas, and we're gonna set up I know this didn't happen, but let's say
that's what he's saying. He's saying you can't ensure that.
Right.
That's his whole point.
Yeah. So right. And do you disagree with that, Tom? That you can make a nonpartisan
to an extent. But I think that like the human element probably makes it to where it's going to be a lot harder to guarantee any sort of nonpartisanship, because no matter, even if it is the fairest map of all time, anybody can find an argument to say that it is partisan or unfair in some way. I think that like currently we're getting types of technology to where there could be literal algorithms that are set to say like how you set up one district versus another to make it to where it's just a computer program in math that says what district is where, and leave it at that.
Yeah.
So no, I'm just kidding. No, Castle, did that answer your question though, Castle? Because you seem to kind of be on the same.
I got one answer, Castle.
I'll let Tyler. Yeah, Tyler, if you want to
segue into what you actually, Tom brought up a fantastic point there with algorithmic based policy. I've been kind of thinking about that because I'm a programmer for how many legal immigrants and visa holders we let in.
We want super Earth, is what you're saying.
Well, we should bring in X amount of people based off of the previous year's jobless numbers and do an algorithmic setup for that as well. So I kind of like that. But going into Castle's question about what he seems to see as a conflict, cognitive dissonance on my part here. The opening claim by Tom was that Democrats were good on gerrymandering, Republicans can't win without it. So the evil other had to be stopped, and that's why they went the other way on this recently. That's what I was refuting when I brought up California doing it. In long term, I am a super fan of gerrymandering. Think about the mechanism. You said that they can't win without it in your opening.
No, I didn't say they can't win without it. I said that they had an advantage to it over the past, and that I was happy that they had an advantage from it because we need competitive parties.
Sorry, I misquoted you slightly there. My bad. All right, so the reason why I like gerrymandering is because if you have 3 districts with 70% one party approval, the minority party never is going to have a fucking chance there. You're going to get some instantiated politician that's never going to leave his seat, and he's going to be there for fucking 30 years, and that's where corruption happens, when someone is in power too long. I want gerrymandering. What you do is you take 3 70% districts, and instead you break them down to 5 districts that are only 55% approval. That way, if you have a bad presidency like Trump's having right now because of his economic approval, a bad midterm could swing all 5 of those seats to the other party. That makes it a much more competitive district. Like, you can only make districts so competitive. There's not even amounts of Republicans and Democrats in every state. But having 5 districts that are 55% Republican and 45% Democrat, to me, is much better than 3 that are just solid, hardcore Republican, and then 2 that are competitive.
And that's the actual way that this cycle of gerrymandering ends, by the way. Like, it's not going to end because of some government fiat. It's going to end because somebody's going to gerrymander too thin. They're going to get wiped out, and all the other states are going to go, oh, hold on. We can't gerrymander to that extent. We're going to ease off by 10% because we need more of a buffer. Right? Because right now, states are pushing it to like the mathematical extremes, and it does leave them open to a big flip. Will it happen this cycle? God knows, right? I don't know, but it is something that will happen eventually if we keep going the way that we're going. But I mean that is what it is. I don't know. I mean, with the VRA case now, at least it's a level playing field, so that's a good thing. And states are going to do what they do, and they'll fight it out politically, and we'll see how it turns out.
It's a level playing field, like in the sense that everybody has the same federal standard. But when all of these other states already have laws against partisan gerrymandering, and by far the majority of them are Democrat states, there isn't as much of a level playing field until they have time to actually pass new legislation to get rid of this. But coming up in the midterms, there's currently like a big disadvantage. Now, I want to just say real quick that it is true that like technically we didn't have a decision from the Supreme Court saying whether or not you were allowed to have partisan gerrymandering, but it had been like in tons of states and tons of redistricting cases where they were being challenged. There had been tons of cases where they did like flat out admit, yes, we're doing this based on partisan lines in front of judges in the past. It's just that from one state to another, they're going to look at that very differently, and it never seemed to be like enough to go to the Supreme Court for them to change their ambiguity on it.
I don't disagree with that. Just to add some color, like in the 1960s, there was this line of jurisprudence that came out of the court where it said that there was a guarantee of one person, one vote. And then it became before that, everyone knew partisan gerrymandering was pretty much legal because it had a history back to the founding. But then people started thinking, oh, maybe it's illegal. We're not sure. And some people brought challenges, like in 2016, a circuit court struck down a map for being a partisan gerrymander under equal protection law. So there were challenges to it, but people weren't sure. And sometimes courts were striking it and sometimes they weren't. And then in 2019, the court clarified that there's no constitutional standard. Congress could, in theory, pass a law, but there's the Constitution doesn't itself mandate it. And by the way, for some people who I don't think anyone here is taking this position, so I'll just say it for the audience, the court was 100% right. Because there's no standard in the Constitution, and the worst possible universe would be the courts inventing a standard and then enforcing the standard, because that's basically the Supreme Court taking over control of the states by proxy, which is not the outcome that anybody wants. So, we end up in the world now where partisan gerrymandering has no federal restriction. There's some VRA restrictions that remain, but the VRA is a lot of a lower bar than it used to be, which is pretty much a level playing field federally. And Tom, I agree with you. Certain states, of course, have some states have laws in place, but of course, California had a constitutional amendment in place that prevented it from doing additional partisan gerrymandering, and it rescinded and amended its constitution and then did the gerrymanders. So state laws are going to be whatever barrier they are, but that's hard. That's up to the party in power in each state to work with.
But we agree that California is special in the case to where they do everything by referendum, to where they're capable of getting things done a lot faster than other states that have to have everything go through their legislature, right?
Yeah, but I guess my point is I have no interest in creating uniformity in the states as to state law. Like the states should have differences in their legal structures. That's their right as states.
Yeah, sure.
If states decided they wanted to have like a commission or whatever, that's up to them, and they can figure it out.
Let me ask this. Okay, so I guess we kind of already talked about where it's come from and how it's going. Now let's talk about the more fun aspect of this, right? How do we see this going forward? We talked about the census kind of being redone here. We've talked about how either Texas started it or Cali started it or New York started it. We don't really need to get in the weeds on that, but it's here now, and I've seen, under some projections, a plus 14 swing. I think the current odds are looking like more like plus 10 to 12, which would leave something like 10 to 12 seats up for grabs and toss-ups if everybody wins all the seats they're supposed to. And I think no parties won it, and so that leaves between like 8 to 1, depending on which metric you go by for the Republicans to keep. Do we see this actually fundamentally affecting midterms in any kind of real way, or is this just hyper-partisan talk? What do we think?
So it depends. What we're seeing from the most recent ruling is likely 12 seats are probably going to go Republican of all the states that are now capable of losing one of their majority black districts actually go forth with a new map. We've seen, I think, only 4 initiate the process so far, but 12 seats is going to help a lot. I want to say it was FAIR that did a study, or one of those right-wing think tanks that did a study. If both of those things go through, that's like 28 seats that would go to the Republicans from the Democrats in total between voting rights and illegal deportations and not being counted in the census.
But as Ryan was talking about earlier, he was saying that like they don't want to gerrymander too thinly. The best way to gerrymander is always to get like a 51% to 49%, like to make it as thin as possible, so that you're getting like the exact advantage you want to take, or you're taking as much advantage of the lines being drawn as much as possible. But there's no way to like really know how representative a vote is for the House or the Senate, for the House overall. Like the best way that we normally look at is like who people voted for in the last election. Donald Trump won in Georgia pretty handily in the last election, yet we have 2 Democrat senators here in Georgia. By far the majority of our state legislature is Republican, but again, 2 Democrat senators. So there's and Joe Biden won the year before in the election right before that. So there's it's hard to ever know like exactly how representative your House seats are of the state.
Yeah, and Georgia's actually a great example of why I favor aggrandizing the role of states and minimizing the role of national politics to the extent we can, because local politics are so much more sensitive to the people and the communities and the concerns of those people, where you see outcomes like Georgia, where it's like, depending on the political moment, depending on the politician who's running, it'll be blue and then red and then blue again. And I actually think that's a lot healthier. Like when you make things national, things boil down to wedge issues that drown out everything else. And it's kind of a shitty way to do politics. And it's a very shitty way to do democracy. It just doesn't work at all.
Right. But I think that is part of it, though, is that like when we're talking about drawing the maps with a very thin line there of like 51% to 49%, that a slight turn can make it to where it turns out 51-49 in the exact opposite direction. And even the gerrymander war being what it is seems to have so far benefited Democrats, at least in like opinion polls. But the gerrymander war, in the sense of like how many seats Republicans believe that they've gained out of this, is obviously benefiting them. And so how that turns out in reality when there's like expected to be a blue wave, there's a good bit to go until that happens, but there's as of right now, there's expected to be a blue wave, and that there's this gerrymander war could actually end up benefiting the exact opposite side in each state that's trying to do this.
Yeah.
I kind of want to push back a little bit on that.
Yeah, Castle, I want to hear your thoughts on that. Like, because you're kind of sitting left, but you're like, I'm gonna say more normie than some of the less online people. What do you think of what Tom just said there? Do you agree, like, with the Democrats, like getting a more favorable outlook going forward, or do you think,
Yeah, so 2 things. I posted the Real Clear Politic polling, and Democrats right now, the average is around like 7, which is in line with what 2018 was looking like, and the latest polls are showing them, even in New York Times or Quinnipiac, they're in double digits. So like in that type of state. In that type of state, I think that the gerrymandering may not affect as beneficially for Republicans. But I think 2026 and beyond, after the midterms, I think you're going to see a lot of that generic ballot polling show a much tighter race, where the Republicans are going to win a lot of those seats back if they are taken by Democrats. And the thing that I kind of disagree with Tom a little bit is like, and Tyler, I think you both mentioned like, oh, if you have these entrenched districts that are 70-30, and then you just split them up into 3 more equal districts that are still favoring one side, but maybe it's smaller. I don't think that the states themselves that are controlled by either Democrats or Republicans are going to be that dumb to make them as close as that. Like when we see the gerrymandering happening, it's not like that they're making them just a little gerrymandered, right? They're making them into +10, +12 districts, which are still in Republican favor or Democrat favor. So I think that you'll see some dummy manders happen. In South Carolina, I think that they were showcasing that the current map that they're proposing to take all the districts into Republican hands may have that effect for one or two of them. But in a lot of states, like even Texas, there are just so many Republican voters where it's going to be a lot harder for them to dummy mander these districts and have that kind of implication where if they overdo it, it'll correct to the other side and Democrats will win them. I'm sure it's going to happen to a couple districts, but I still think long term, the Republicans know what they're doing. The gerrymandering that's happening on both sides, they're going to make sure that even in wave years, it's still going to be a tough ask for the other party to win. So I think that the solution, or not even the solution really, but I think the end to all this is either every state is going to be so entrenched in gerrymander their way where it's going to have to come down to Congress to do something about it, or the people to actually put it to a vote, some politician, whether it's the president or enough people in one party to make this big enough of an issue where people actually care about it enough. Because right now, people say that they care about gerrymandering, and I believe that they do, but there's very little that they've been able to do to really change that. I mean, in California and Virginia, you had people actually go out to vote for Democrats to change either the state constitution or to say on a ballot that, yeah, we're fine with you guys changing these districts to be more liberal. So people say one thing, they vote for another thing. It doesn't seem like there's really any solution to that right now. I still think it's bad, but it seems like the only way forward is to gerrymander the shit out of the whole country until people really wake up to it, I guess.
Exactly. No, that's exactly
I agree
right.
with almost everything.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was saying that's exactly right. That, like, it's not that I love gerrymandering, though Tyler does love gerrymandering. So shout out Tyler. But like, it does just seem like it's the best possible option for where we are right now. And there will be something that happens that changes that eventually, right? Like, you know, like we were all surprised at how easily California was able to get the right to gerrymander. Some of us thought that would be harder, right? The Democrats were happy to have a gerrymandering war until the VRA decision came out, and then said, oh, wait, turns out maybe this isn't such a great thing. You know, like the decision in Virginia where the Democrats were trying to gerrymander and the Virginia State Court had something to say about it. Like, there's going to be new data, new information, roadblocks. Maybe it's dummy mandering, maybe it's something else. But, you know, it's not going to be a status quo forever. But right now, I think we need to let it run its course, if only because the alternatives are just so horrifying. And I can't imagine anybody would be happy with that. Though I'm sure all the Democrats on the panel would be delighted to have Mike Johnson draw your districts. I think that he's a wise and fair man who would draw national maps for the good of the country.
So I
did want to push back real quick because the from my understanding, like I think studies that were done by Princeton and the Brennan Center both said that like Texas and Florida did kind of dummy mander their districts because of the amount of pressure that Donald Trump was putting on them. I believe those were the two, if I'm remembering correctly, but that Trump was like really putting a lot of pressure to get as many seats as possible. Whereas like obviously the opposite of doing a dummy mander is to just go ahead and give some Democrat seats where like you've got hyper concentrated areas where you're just saying we're going to give all the Democrats to like these 2 or 3 districts, and then we're going to go ahead and try to like slim everything as much as possible everywhere else to get as many seats as possible. And that does seem to be the case right now in a lot of these states.
In Florida and Texas especially, I do think because of the Hispanic vote, that may cause more of a dummy mander. In other states, more in like the Midwest, you have Missouri, Indiana. I don't think it's as big of a hit, but I will agree. I do think in Florida especially, I did read that as well, where the Hispanic vote is flipped again more towards Democrats, where they have a lot more sway in how those districts may turn this time around.
Good, a Democrat one in Miami.
Yeah. So that may be, I think that may be an issue for them in those particular states.
Tyler, what were you saying?
Yeah.
And I have something too.
I just want to get, like, people think of gerrymandering as a scary word because of public campaigning. When you look at the results of not gerrymandering or gerrymandering, generally they enjoy it. So when you look at the most unpopular people, they're the most partisan, the ones that are in the safest districts. And the way you create safe districts is by putting 70% vote for your side in. Generally, you see it a lot around leadership or people that they want to allow to speak freely without having to face losing elections. Adam Schiff, Hakeem Jeffries, Ilhan Omar, AOC on one side. The other side, Kevin McCarthy, Jim Jordan, Steve Scalise, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're looking at some of the most partisan on each side, and they're generally in almost all a negative approval rating nationally because they are the way they are. When you make these more competitive districts, those people get voted out because they only have like a 5% vote threshold. Gerrymandering creates more purple districts. And I've seen a few of the studies. I'm not telling you I've read everyone, but I've seen a few of the studies that tend to say that gerrymandering creates these bad effects, but I see nothing more than just correlation. These effects are going on at the same time gerrymandering is going on, and it's right now. Where like Trump's been in politics for 11 years, and finally now we're seeing this escalated gerrymandering fight. It seems to me to be more of a result of the divide and not the driving cause of it. I would say gerrymandering is just one of the many pillars that both sides have tried to attack to keep themselves in power. I don't see it as uniquely evil.
Well, so Castle brought this up a little bit ago about like what like people vote on is different, and I'm kind of interested in why people are saying there's this giant blue wave, because right now the polls I'm seeing is something like 80% of MAGA voters are pleased with Trump, and then I'm seeing something like 40 to 38% or something like Republican voters are okay with Trump, and then I'm seeing on the Dem side they're having approval ratings like 14% with a 2 million person voter switch, and so with the gerrymandering.
You're missing the most important.
Tell me, what do you got? What am I missing here?
Independents. They are the biggest block right now. Independents are bigger than Republicans or Democrats right now. They are like 45% of our country. So they are by far the most important group.
But do independents
voting independent?
Vote
No. That's the question.
Do they come out? Yeah. Do they vote generally at midterms? Like I know, like generals, yeah, but like I guess what is leading y'all to believe that this issue is going to be the one that spurs them, or like this in conjunction with the other? Because I don't know where I'm not seeing that data. Like maybe one of y'all can fill me in.
So the biggest thing here, Tom, I think you might agree with this though, is that when Trump is not on the ballot is the biggest problem for Republicans than the actual issue of whether or not he's doing a bad job. When he's on the ballot, people show up for him, and when he's not on the ballot, they have a harder time for people to show up. That's why I said after 2026, I think you're going to see Republicans start to take advantage and exploit more of the gerrymandering that's happening right now for the midterms. And independents definitely are an important piece of this, but I think the more important piece to why a lot of people feel like Democrats are still going to hold on to the House at least this time is because you don't have Trump on the ballot. Also, his approval rating is worse, I think, at this point than it was his first term. So I think you do have a culmination of things going that it will make it beneficial for Democrats this time around. Those would be the two biggest things for sure.
Well, I mean, I think the problem, it doesn't matter. So like, let's say only like 20% of independents show up, but the 20% is proportional to what it is their polling is showing right now, which is like 70-30 in favor of Democrats. Like it's still going to be a big advantage in that case for Democrats. And we wouldn't expect it to be that low, but that's kind of the point, is that like independents are hardcore leaning towards Dems right now.
I don't think we see that necessarily against like the presidential race in particular. It's very hard to pull for 2028. When we see 2028, we get a whole different block of voters than going into the midterm. With the midterm, you get the partisans. You generally get high propensity voters that are very party active. You tend to not get as many independents. The ones that are politically engaged, as of 2024, the Republican Party was winning the majority of them. So when you see Trump polling right now, what do you think of Trump? It's different when you're saying, what do you think of X person versus Y person? It's a whole different equation in there.
Yeah, and look, it's the midterms. The party in power tends to get washed in the midterms, so I would expect that gives an advantage to the Dems. We talk a big game about national politics being real complicated. In reality, they're probably not. Like if Trump can reach some resolution of the conflict in Iran that causes gas prices to suddenly dip right before the midterms, that's going to make his chances a lot better. If he can't reach such a resolution and gas prices stay high, that's going to make the turnout for Republicans a lot worse, right? Like, and I think sometimes in the online sphere we get we get really wrapped up in our own importance, right? Like if you were looking on X, you thought Vivek was going to get crushed by all of Nick Fuentes' minions who were out there, right? Chanting about Vivek, all the problems with Vivek. He won by like 88% or something, right? Like it was a joke. Like I think that oftentimes national politics are pretty simple. And I mean, it's going to be incumbency, it's going to be the economy. And that's going to be the things that people really care about as they come into the midterms.
I think that's an interesting point. I brought this up before we all started, is that it is well within my purview to see Trump doing something along the lines of like stopping the war, getting us the gas prices to drop, and then as soon as midterms are over, immediately going back over there, right? Like that seems like something Trump would do to me, right? And so when I'm talking to normies, right, I go out a lot, and it's very interesting because what you're saying, I don't know that I'm seeing this like independent like shift. Personally, I've seen all the people that are very like pro MAGA. They're very motivated. Like, we got to come out at midterms. We got to go out. Like, we like the gerrymandering. Massey had to go because he was everything against like Republicans. You know, these people need to fall in line. And I see general report like Republicans are kind of echoing that. And I just don't know because it seems like the whole messaging the Dems are having right now is very like, I read everything anti-Israel or everything like Trump bad, and the gerrymandering seems to kind of be caught up in that, where it's just like one like token thing, you know, like a plethora of issues they have, with no real solution. Because like some of the people here have said they've gerrymandered shit out of some states like Indiana, and you know it seems kind of like, I don't know, hypocritical. I think the average person.
I don't think anybody thinks that Democrats are less likely to gerrymander just as extremely as Republicans. I don't think anybody thinks that. The difference is that Democrats are the only ones who have implemented things to make it to where their states aren't being gerrymandered in a partisan manner, and they're the only ones who have tried passing federal legislation to end partisan gerrymandering. But there is a huge shift in the direction of independence, not only because of people like Nick Fuentes and, you know, far lefties who are becoming more and more towards the extremes on the outside of the spectrum, where they're
Fuentes is a far lefty now.
Good one. Okay, whatever. But those people are independents as well, right? They're not considered Republican or Democrat. When you think of somebody like Hassan, he's also an independent. And then you have the more centrist groups who it is very popular today to just not like either party, to be anti both parties, to be very populist. And these people are spread out across the entire spectrum. So when we say independents, we're not talking about centrists necessarily. We're talking about people all across the spectrum. 45% of America currently is independent, and that's been the case since the 2024 election. 45% of Americans have been considered independents, making them the biggest part of the voting bloc currently, and 45% of independents are centrists. So it's which makes them the plurality of independents as well. But the point is that yes, they are a massive part of the voting bloc. And if Democrats are moving more towards the center and Republicans are moving more towards the edges, that ends up giving Democrats a bit more of an advantage, especially with the Lincoln Project-esque right-wingers.
There's a perception there that's interesting. I don't have any data, so I'm not going to. I don't know whether that's right. I don't actually think the modern iteration of the Republican Party is like particularly far right on social issues. Like if like abortion is a state thing, it's not on. There's no national abortion ban going on. Trump is like the first Republican president that's not had an axe to grind with gay rights, gay marriage, this sort of thing. Like, I actually don't know that they're that far off the center. I think that we're hyper partisan right now, and that's what it is. Now, the interesting about the independents is, I agree with you, the centrists are the ones to focus on, just because like the kind of like extreme centrists, let's be honest, they're much more likely to engage in performative non-voting than they are to actually vote. So, you know, like you can court them all you want, but ultimately,
but they're not less likely. Historically, they haven't been less likely to vote. They actually voted at a higher rate in the last presidential election. They're less likely to vote in primaries, because for a lot of states, you have to be registered Republican or Democrat in order to vote in primaries. So independents just aren't able to vote in primaries, but they are voting in general elections at higher rates than Democrats.
Do you think all
and
the people who sat out voting for Harris because of Gaza were like really going to do it? Like my sense with them was always with that they were like, no, you know what? Like, we're probably more interested in performatively not supporting the party than we are in actually.
I don't think that was really a high percentage of people to where it was like a difference maker.
Well, but we're talking about we're talking about a sub. Right now, we're talking about independents, and within independents, we're talking about the subset that are extreme left. So yeah, we're talking about a subset of a subset of a subset. So the numbers are going to be small. I'm just saying, I think the centrists are the people to talk about, because the people who are on the extreme.
No, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah.
I was saying the centrists are the plurality of the independents. So they are like the most important part, which is why I was saying the Democrats becoming more moderate as the Republican side is seen as more extreme ends up benefiting the Democrats.
Well, I think that the problem with the polling, though, and I think Ryan brought it up, was, or maybe it was Tyler, but Democrats, the way that they're polling at, I think it's like 12%. I don't know if I buy the argument that they're seen as more moderate. I think they're just benefiting at the fact that the economy is doing really poorly. In 2018, I think there was a real big vibe shift around
like 27%.
Okay, if it's 27, I mean, it's not. I don't think it's good either way. But I think in 2018, it was like a vibe shift where people legit thought Donald Trump was going to end like democracy. And now in 2026, I think people are understand like, okay, he's president now. We can't really go after him on that because he's going to leave office. But the economy is a lot worse than it was in 2018. And I think the economy affects more of those centrist type voters that you're talking about, which is why I think it could be a bigger wave than in 2018. Do people value the economy more, or do people actually think that Donald Trump is as bad for democracy as they did in 2018? I think you kind of have to see which one people value. And I think when you talk about the average voter that isn't online pilled, like some of us see online, and we talk about the Hassan voter, the Nick Fuentes voter, like, yeah, those people exist, but I think we all agree they're very few, far between in actually moving the needle on midterm or federal elections. So I think you're going to see a lot of the more average type person show up because they hate paying for gas at $4 or $5 a gallon when it was half that just a few months ago. The thing that Ryan did bring up is that because politics is measured, weeks feel like years. I mean, if next week Trump reversed half his policies, you could see a complete vibe shift in the polling. So it's really up to him and if he decides he really cares about the midterms. It sounds like, based on what he said in his rhetoric, he does not give a crap at all, which is great for Democrats, but we'll see.
There's no world in my mind where Democrats still don't win the midterm yet. I just don't see it materializing. They're definitely going to take the majority. We're definitely going to see peers under the behind the curtain of the UAE and crypto deal that the Trump kids did, and blah, blah, blah. And all the people that said Hunter Biden was just penis obsession are now going to suddenly be upset about legalized money laundering going on by the other administration. Everyone's going to switch shoes like we saw with gerrymandering on X. We were all fucking there when 1 week this party was in favor of gerrymandering because they got it passed in Virginia. Then they hate it when the Republicans did it a couple of weeks ago with Texas. You don't fucking see the dance every fucking day to fuel the rage cycle. It's all silly partisan bullshit. At the end of the day, the actual effects of gerrymandering are rather popular. But when you're looking at voters, like, you can't look at the total amount of voters. You have to look at the likely voters. And when you look at likely voters, at least in 2023 and 2024, when the studies were done by Pew, the Republicans controlled the majority of leaning independent to their side. They had the larger party for the first time in nearly 100 years. I just think that right now Democrats are out of the spotlight. They're not in power. Nobody's seeing, besides, Ryan seeing them going around yelling about packing the court, which is extremely unpopular. They're out there pushing all their stupid, unpopular policies right now. They're tapping into the anti-Israel sentiment, like, the ethno-state for Jews. When you say Israeli, you don't really mean Jew. But yeah, so, but at the end of the day, like, they haven't gotten out there with their crazy shit. When they start to run for like federal office, they're going to get out there with their crazy shit again. Illegal should stay. Crime is root causes, and we shouldn't punish the criminal nearly as much. Gender issues, anti-police issues, white nationalism phobia, normalizing Iran. These things are just not that popular, and we haven't seen them in a while. They're in the backseat. Once they come out again, I think we're going to still see a resurgence of the majority being Republican in general elections.
By the way, I still think Trump's policies and decisions will be the most impactful thing, but I'm going to earn my $7,000 right now. The funniest possible outcome would be that like Fuentes takes, and this is like the Fuentes master plan, right? Fuentes takes all the fucking Jew haters and the Jewsburgs, moves them over to the Democratic side, and then, AIPAC just fucking wipes out all these Democrats for being anti-Zionist, just like they did to Massey in the House. You know where to send the check. I'm still available. Go Israel. So yeah, I think that would be the funniest possible outcome. So keep your eyes peeled.
Well, speaking
I just
of
think
that,
I think that they're like, I think it's ridiculous to think that that's like things are going to swing back the other way as long as there is a Trump-esque party. I think the majority, and especially the independents, are going to keep looking at the extreme partisanship that is on the right. When we just had Joe Biden, who was there to have a return of normalcy and to be the moderate and working with the Republicans, and that the Republicans in the House were regularly showing appreciation for how much he actually met with them and how much he actually included them while they were a minority and they couldn't actually do anything to stop him. The same with Kamala Harris when she was running and having like more of a bipartisan vibe. These things are I think that especially with right now with the war, with Trump having this like fund for January 6ers, the pardons for January 6ers, the amount of like corruption that keeps coming out, the amount of people who are dissatisfied with the Supreme Court, all of these things I think are compounding problems that are making it to where either has to be like a clean break from the MAGA version of the Republican Party, or Democrats are just going to continue to win. All
right, Tyler, you want to dumpster that, or do you want me to?
None of it addressed my point at all, so go ahead.
Yeah, I think people have this like weird history thing where they look back at Biden in this way that had nothing to do with how he was actually perceived at the time. Like, the COVID measures were wildly unpopular and viewed as draconian, viewed as the government lying to you, viewed as the government cramming down and making health decisions through executive action for 80 million Americans through the stroke of a pen, which is a greater executive overreach than anything they've ever accused Trump of doing. People remember that the Biden administration was attempting to create unequal treatment on the basis of race, on the basis of gender, on the basis of identity group. Actual racism, was attempting to enact it into law, was using the SEC to do it, was fighting in the Supreme Court to do it. But they remember the debacle with student loan forgiveness. They remember trying to wipe out the entire coal industry with the stroke of a pen through executive order. This was not at all a come to the middle administration. He ran that way. And by the way, at the time, I was a Democrat.
And numbers just don't bear out anything.
I voted for him on that basis, but that is not how he governed. He governed, and he's proud of it. You talk to any progressive pundit, he was the most progressive president of their lifetime. He didn't govern as a centrist. To say so is a joke. So yeah, I mean, of course.
I didn't say centrist. I said a moderate. Not a centrist.
What exactly is the difference in your mind between those two things?
He did pass the most bipartisan bills than any of the two Trump terms. I mean, you got to admit, he worked with Republicans in Congress more than Trump has ever worked with Democrats. Whoa. He passed bills that had both parties sign off onto them. I mean, you can say that. You can say that he was some hyper partisan progressive, but nobody who looks back at the Biden administration says he failed on things like COVID or failed on things like race-based equity. It was all economics. It was all because of inflation. That's why he was and he was old, 100%. Obviously. So I don't think anybody thinking it was because of COVID. I mean, those were state things.
We are rewriting history here.
Yeah.
The top five the top five things Trump won was immigration, which was a fucking absolute disaster under Biden. Intentionally, that was their status quo. That's what they ran on. They ran on immigration, jobs, and economy, because they got inflation wrong for about 9 months. They said it was transitory and ignored it. After that, it was jobs and economy is technically too. Gender, 70% of people said that gender theory, kids and fucking men and women's sports and shit like that weighed in on their vote in a fucking exit poll.
Where are you getting this from?
That's not a federal
exit polls. Exit polls.
Exit polls did not say that. The economy, not jobs. The economy and inflation was by far number one. Then number two was like had to do with
there's two exit polls that said immigration was number one. It was immigration.
I mean,
there were 2 polls. Immigration, 2 polls.
Yes, but immigration. That was it. That was always 1 and 2, but it wasn't jobs. Jobs, like Biden had by far like the most jobs in his presidency in my lifetime. He had the biggest growth of jobs, and then since the Trump administration, it has literally gone down. I think like 80% since the Biden administration. There's nobody left.
I mean, you know why that is, though, right? Part of the reason,
well, because they had COVID, and there were the Trump administration policies made it to where there were
and because they
and then
count,
when Biden got in,
they
he brought a lot of those
federal jobs.
Yeah,
like if you actually if you talk about like
federal
actual
jobs are not
policy,
a part of it.
We are pro job cutting. We want a portion of those jobs gone. But like the other thing is like also like just go back in time like that Kamala's for they them, Trump's for us. That was.
Do you think federal jobs are a huge part of that?
I think it's a portion. Yeah.
And illegals.
It's a portion, but it's not like 10% of the.
Hold on, we're in full employment.
This dropped 80%, and you bring up, well, that's because of federal jobs. No,
no. This is out of context. We're at full employment still, and on top of that, jobless claims are nowhere near where they were under the Biden administration. They're significantly down. This is not only government employment, but kicking illegals out of the country. As illegals go, companies have to pay more actual wages to U.S. workers. They can't get around regulation and taxes anymore. So there's less overall jobs as well.
That's the thing. There are like
I know there's less.
The point I was making is that like the jobs metric is not one that I think at least those on the right are inclined to care about at this time, because it bakes in a lot of stuff that would be like downstream of policies they favor. Like Tyler's point is, if there are deportations, that's going to have impact on things like jobs. That's going to have impact on things like GDP. That's considered baked into the pie. It's a good thing.
I was going to say, look at specific sectors that, like, we're not talking about like the farm labor employment data. We're talking about tech jobs, financial sector jobs. Like, I think we can all agree it's harder to find a job today for most folks than it was just a year ago, right?
No, not H-1B visa changes.
No?
That fucking really helped me out. But no, the trade war, to be clear, I'm not taking a right-wing stance here. The trade war probably is the number one reason for job decline and the economy being bad.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think that the tariffs had something to do with that. It's going to be weird though, because now like the tariffs are this murky legal gray area. So who knows how that's going to play out over the next couple months.
I think this is interesting though, because I'll tell you what I'm seeing on the ground, right? Like I'm seeing something quite a bit different. I'm seeing 2 things. One, AI is taking a lot of people's jobs, right? Whether they like it or not, but it seems to be taking a lot of people's jobs, at least in the service industry, like customer service, et cetera, et cetera. I'm seeing in accounting, some of these kind of jobs are being downsized. So it's kind of like these white collar jobs while manufacturing is simultaneously being built up, whether that's in ranching, whether that's in shipbuilding, whether that's a few others. And so, like, I'm seeing this kind of weird thing where, like, people that I think would tend to vote Democrat already are the ones losing their job versus the ones that have tended to vote Republican who have been hurting for jobs are now like, oh, oil's going to be booming again. Like, right, oil prices go up, oil companies start hiring more, right? I'm seeing, like, shit. And so I don't know that I don't know that necessarily. Yeah, I think the war has slowed job growth, but I think it's, like, slowed job growth for sectors that would already not vote for Trump. Do you all disagree with this kind of like outlook? Like, because I think this is going to play into the redistricting and whatnot quite a bit, and in the midterms.
I mean, I think the oil industry is definitely getting a good deal from this for sure. So I guess that's one sector you can point to. But again, with the tariffs and stuff, you're talking about the auto industry that's being affected by that. A lot of tech companies are being affected by the tariffs that are going on. I mean, I think it was the other day Trump went after his visit to China, actually got a deal where they lowered tariffs on certain goods. So it's just hard for me to imagine how people in the Trump admin at this point don't realize that tariffs or reducing them, it could help him as a midterm message, but they're kind of slow walking it for whatever reason. I think it has affected the job market a lot. Even in, I was just actually looking for rings for my fiance because we're getting married next month, and like,
congrats.
They were even saying like the price of jewelry now because of the tariffs have been going up as well. So even that industry has been affected with how much stock they have.
Not true.
I mean,
by the way, they told you that you're wrong. I have been in the jewelry industry for many years.
I wouldn't lie to you. I mean, look at the price of gold. The price of gold has not gone down.
I'm going to give you some connections. That way you get a good wifey.
I mean, hit me up.
Big
I'll take it.
Big ass ring on the cheek. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll take it. I'll take any jewelry recommendations you got to give me a good deal, because it's been brutal. It's been brutal shopping for it. But no, that's what I haven't heard. At least in the watch industry and in the jewelry business, tariffs have hurt certain parts of that sector. So I'm not saying that every sector. You could talk about certain ones that are benefiting from this. Even with tariffs, certain industries, I'm sure the unions like it, but majority of Americans, I think, have been impacted by that a lot more than people think.
I think the exact opposite. This is a massive boom in the new blue collar. We're seeing trillions of dollars. Trump's claiming 20. I'm not. I'm saying about $7 trillion over the next 10 years of investment in tech in the country. A lot of these are American-based companies. Other ones are the chip company from Taiwan that outdoes us is coming here. So this is fantastic. I think, Gibbs, your question kind of reminds me of 1800 socialists that said machines in our shop this automation is going to completely destroy the working man's life. And at the end of the day, it actually made more manufacturing jobs, more output, and made their jobs safer. What we see from this is, instead of going to a whole team of programmers, you got one guy using Claude AI, turns around and designs you an app for significantly less money. This lowers the barrier to entry. Sure, you might need less low-level programmers working on cell phone apps, but you have a lot more people that are now able, with significantly less money, to enter the market, to become competition, to get that next big app that might be another billion-dollar idea. This is how innovation has spurred capitalism and vice versa. Capitalism spurs innovation to make us the richest nation in the world. It's absolutely fantastic advancements. There's a reason why we're investing in it, to try to be number one. This is the Sputnik of our time.
But this is not a midterm point, because
he just gave an argument for why. Well, hold on. He just gave an argument for why the majority of people are unhappy with these things like tariffs.
I was answering Gibbs' question. I wasn't listening.
Oh, okay. Well, when he finished talking, you said, I completely disagree, and then you started going off on why you.
I didn't even listen.
But okay.
Yeah,
I didn't even listen.
I think the conversation Tyler's having is very interesting. I don't think it's going to impact the midterms, obviously, because it's too far off. But in the long term, and I mean, this is the thing that I sometimes say about Trump, where I think he even if I disagree with his policy, I often agree with him directionally, even if I don't like what the way he's going about doing it, which is that long term, there's going to be an enormous shift away from global supply chains, away from the types of agreements that we've had previously, the types of economies we've had, into a new AI-driven economy, into a new economy where some of the hegemons and the alliances that we've relied on for the last 20, 30 years are not going to be quite the same thing. And I do think it makes a lot of sense to kind of start building up American capacity in these areas and making sure that we are competitive there. And for me personally, this is not data, this is just personal. Like, as a lawyer, it's a really interesting time. Like, I'm at a law firm right now. I enjoy working at a law firm, but with AI, if I wanted to become a solo practitioner, I could. And that's not a thing I ever thought before previously, because I didn't want to go through the headache of hiring so many people. But like getting cheaper legal services, getting all these things, these are interesting possibilities that open a lot of doors for people to be the kind of entrepreneurial Americans that we hope to have, rather than kind of like the corporate 9-to-5 grinders that we've turned into. I think I'm optimistic about it, to be honest with you. Again, nothing to do with the midterms. I think that's years down the road, but it's to
take it back to the point. I think that like the main thing is that it does seem as though there is a trend towards Democrats, regardless of whether or not people are identifying as Democrat. It seems like both sides are more and more unhappy with the parties, and I think that isn't really reflective of whether or not the parties are representative of those sides, but more so just like the rise in populist rhetoric and this sort of anti-establishment ideology that makes that I just think it's popular right now. I think it's a trend, but it does seem as though the Democrats are saying things that people are more in favor of. And I think you guys said something to the effect of like, there isn't really a solution from Democrats in a lot of these areas, but the solutions were the norms that existed before Trump. And one big thing is them talking about bringing back, abortion rights, that they want to implement, more robust healthcare protections for people. And there are a lot of things that Democrats are in favor of, and that are going back to the Joe Biden, the first president with no new wars, is I think really important to people.
I think you're overstating the position. I think that like what you were right about, I totally agree about, is that we're in a populist age and that there's an anti-establishment vibe and that the party in power has a severe disadvantage on that basis in the midterms. I totally agree with you about that. The thing that the Democrats have done most successfully is not talk about their policies. It's avoid talking about their policies. They talk about how bad Trump is. They don't really talk about what they would actually do if they regained power nearly as much. And once they are in the position where they are having to talk about their policies again, they'll find out that Americans hate socialism on the whole. There's blue enclaves where they don't hate it, but they should, but they don't. They don't want federal power grabs over healthcare. They don't want to have, a repeat of COVID era policies. They don't want to have overreach that controls their liberty and makes it feel like Americans are, being crammed down upon by.
What are you calling socialism?
Yeah, I think the left is openly flirting with, if not accepting, socialism. Vote blue no matter who, baby. Mandami, let's go. Let's roll.
I don't know if I totally agree with that, though, because like if you look at the polling too, Ryan, is that a lot of people now on the economy, and I'm not saying on every poll, but on some polls now that they favor Democrats on. So like you talk about their policies still being unpopular. I don't know if that's even coming through anymore, because when you talk of, and when you show people what's happening in the current Trump economy, the fact that you have a majority of people saying that they might prefer Democrat economic policy is a crazy shift, especially for a party that isn't talking a lot about what they would do even if they took power in the House. Well, so I think that showcases that people don't really believe that the Democratic Party themselves are some type of socialist, communist.
That's my point. They're not voting for Democratic policies. They're polling anti-Trump. Right,
but you got to vote for. But you got to vote for them.
Yes, but the point I made was I agreed with Tom about that the anti-Trump thing has been a successful messaging point for the Democrats. My point was when they are in a position where they have to start talking about their policies again and they start getting closer to power, people will remember how fucking awful their policies are.
Well, hold on, that's my point.
The Democrats, wait, just real quick, the main things that they're getting from the Democrats are the main things that Democrats were running on and things that they were doing under the Biden policy. Under the Biden administration, when I'm talking about, trying to implement free healthcare, when I'm talking about abortion rights, these are things that are heavily popular throughout the entire country. And then also having, what was the other thing? The fact that like the Biden administration had one of the fastest recoveries from inflation, that they it's becoming more and more well known that the Republicans have been heavily to blame for the debt for the country, and that like a lot of these things I think are becoming more and more apparent to people hold on. So just more representative of the country.
Tom, gun to your head. When you look at Democratic messaging today, are they talking about issues or about the issues that the Democrats would do differently? Or are they leading with Trump bad?
Yeah, but I also think Trump led with any interview that he was in during his campaign. I literally complained about this with Kamala, saying that anytime somebody asks Trump a question, he starts with Commie Kamala in Sleepy Joe did X, Y, and Z, and the demonic Democrats did this, that, and the other, and then he might give some answer at the end. But first he complains about the other party. I think Democrats are finally getting better at that where they start off complaining about Trump.
Let's assume that's an effective tactic. That only proves my point. Like the Democratic swell, to the extent such a thing exists, is not due to the fact that they have policies that people like.
But you're saying that they don't have
their party
they not have one. Whether or not they start with that is different.
No, what I'm saying is that to the extent that they're showing up well in the polls is because they're successfully messaging an anti-Trump strategy. That's what they're doing, and I actually think they're doing it to hide how unpopular their policies are once they actually have to start talking about their policies, because their policies are fucking dog shit.
What disproves that, though, is that if you polled people again today on a rematch, people would vote for Harris over Trump. So what does that tell you?
that tells me that they're running very strongly on anti-Trump messaging. That's exactly that's my point.
But you're saying that Harris lost because of this terrible messaging about what she would do in the continuation of policy. So why would she be winning?
That's not even what I'm saying.
You don't think that calculus is worked into the Trump administration's idea? Like, they know how long the midterms are away. They know how much time they have to do X, Y, and Z unpopular before the economy raises back up. He's already starting to let off of tariffs. He's let off of sanctions on fucking Russia to bring down gas prices. Like, he's already seeing the economic hurt and turning around and trying to fix it. Once Iran goes away and the trade war goes away, you're going to see an economic boom. A lot of those polling numbers return. You could put Trump back up to just 44%, and the Republicans up 2 points in the generic battle. It's basically a fucking toss-up.
So I want to come back.
Well, the argument is that the Democrats don't have a solution, though, and that's not true, because, like I said, the Democrats are running on is representative of the country. One, and then two, the vote for Trump was just as much a referendum on Biden and the Biden administration's policies, to where people were voting against Kamala, not as much in favor of Trump, and that as well. I don't know that that's like as much of a difference.
That's not the argument. Keep saying it. It's not the argument.
I want to throw something out here, because I actually have a different reading of the tea leaves, but I think that, like, Cass, you've kind of hit this, but like somewhat like opposite of what it is, right? So, like, we have like midterms, we have off-year elections, right? But Dami won, right? And everybody's saying this is a big referendum, and all the people that are going against the Republicans are going like more socialist or more left. I don't necessarily see what Tom is saying, where it's getting more moderate. I think like the party as a whole is like going more left, right? Because they're pushing these policies, because these people feel like we are disenfranchised in some manner, so they're pushing for a populist socialist policy. And we're seeing that with Madani.
City?
Well, hold on. I'm just
city.
No, hold on.
Characterizing the party over this.
Well, hold on. I'm going to tell you why I think this, right? And it's basically because what I'm seeing is I see Madami, I see some others like AOC is kind of like a big name that's being floated around as potential presidential candidate. Some of these others that are pretty heavy, like more left leaning and moderate, I think. And so when I'm seeing this thing, I think right now the messaging is, it's the economy, but it's the same kind of like populists. We're disenfranchised with the current uniparty. I think Republicans have pushed out the uniparty like neocons, and the Dems still have the holdover of the neolibs. And it's just like restructuring. I don't know if that's going to translate to midterms though. Whenever I'm not sure that y'all like are taking the right message. Like, do you what indicates to you that you see they're becoming more moderate? Like, as a Dem, like
by far the majority of congressmen and women on the Democrat side who are running right now are moderates. I will give you Mamdani. Yes, he is not a moderate for sure, but he's a mayor of a city. When you look at all of the gubernatorial races, there were, I think, 4 different Democrats that won at the same time as Mamdani, who were all moderates. The top 2 candidates right now for the Democrat side, the most popular, the ones that are polling the highest, are Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom. These are 2 people who are considered to be the most moderate candidates in this race. So yes, I do think that there is a heavy trend towards moderation, you think, especially because we are getting a lot of the anti-Trump
just let me ask this. You think
just kind of giving up on the party?
You think that Kamala and Gavin are like considered moderate by the average person? You think is that like a
I think Kamala, Gavin, yes. I think it's like incorrect on Gavin, but Kamala not as much because she has a lot of that 2020 stink on her from when she was like saying, like banning fracking and shit like that, back then. That I think in the 2024 election, though, she drastically shifted to much more moderate positions.
But nobody believed her, so she didn't get elected. Yeah, look, Kamala Harris is... not
you say nobody, she barely lost.
And if she had been believed, she probably would have won. But she did not come across as authentically running center. She came across as.
Do you disagree that was an election that was a referendum on Biden?
I don't disagree. I think it was also a referendum on her being a dog shit candidate, and part of her being a dog shit candidate is that she was viewed as a Trojan horse for progressive policies, and that was part of her problem, is that she came across as inauthentic, and people didn't believe her. That's why the trans stuff hit so hard. She never actually ran on the issue, but people knew where she was, and Newsom is like.
No. She
like
came off as inauthentic in the first election too. When in 2020,
she's a terrible candidate. She's a terrible candidate.
Sure, but I'm just saying that people. It's not necessarily that people think she's a Trojan horse for progressive policies.
Oh no, they
just kind of blow with the wind.
Do, Tom, because she's a.
It was in polling.
She's a terrible candidate, and she became the vice president because she was the second best available black woman. So yeah, when people,
I'm not saying that they don't view her as farther left.
When people see her, they are immediately reminded of the fact that the Democrats are so addicted to race-based identity politics that they chose a terrible politician and a terrible choice to be the vice president of the country on that basis nakedly. Which, yeah, I think that is a thing for a lot of people, right? And that doesn't come across as moderate. It comes across as wildly progressive and identitarian, and dare I say it, kind of racist.
Can I jump in real quick here? Because I want to go back to the point that was the origin of this. Democrats do not have good policies when they start running on the things that they want. And when it comes out, I was making this point half an hour ago. Ryan was making it a little bit ago. When you look at polling, if you're asking, how do you view X? It's different than how do you view X versus Y. If you look, the Democrat Party is still less popular than Republicans. Generally, in most polls, when asked handling of the economy, immigration, Republicans take the lead. That Atlas poll a couple days ago didn't look good. It was negative GOP and everything. But generally,
Republicans, approval ratings?
Yeah, like what party would you approve of to take care of the economy? Democrats went education, healthcare, a couple other things, but Republicans still control the economy. So regardless how bad it is, it's not because they fucked up.
Wait, I don't think that's true.
Fucked up.
I'm almost positive just 2 months ago, there was tons of polling that came out showing that Democrats are now more trusted with the economy by like 5 points.
I read a couple Atlas polls that show that. Generally, I still saw Republicans up in that from what I was reading in most polls. I look at them quite a bit. But
no, I think recently that's right though. It might be more recent with other polls outside of Atlas, but what I was referencing to Ryan too is like that issue alone, which I think Trump was reelected on because people felt like his economy in 2019 was objective. And I think it was objectively good. People voted because they wanted that back, and it's not what it is anymore.
Kamala was objectively one of the worst fucking candidates. She was the only person in the Democratic Party that could not speak better than Biden. She didn't pivot to moderate at all because she didn't take a stance. When they asked if she wanted to decouple with Biden, she said no. When they asked if she wanted to denounce her fucking entire history of being like the furthest left senator in the fucking Senate for one of the 2 years she was in there,
I don't think your mic is on. I just realized
I'm sorry, I'm a little too far away.
And this is it. Okay, maybe it is. Can you tap it real quick? It sounds like you're on the. You might be on.
There we go. So no, I'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the end, she pivoted. She didn't pivot anywhere. She just didn't refuse. She refused to take any stances on anything. All of her 2020 stances and before, she refused to denounce. She wrote a book, Smart on Crime, that was basically the manual for fucking forgiving criminals, no cash bail, lowering sentences and whatnot. She didn't stand in the way of Prop 42. She never took a stance on it because she was running for office at the time. But her office generally pushed it through very quickly. It helped it the best they could. And that's the best they could really do. So
what is a policy in 2024 that she was being asked about that she wasn't taking a stance on?
The war in Israel.
War in Israel.
Yeah. There was a bunch of shit.
What didn't she take? She was part of the negotiations for the ceasefire. She was she called numerous times, 5 separate times that she called for ceasefires and said that there needed to be more accountability for Israel.
That's not taking a stance.
This is what that's more okay. There's more of a stance than like I guess maybe Trump's like uber pro-Israel stance was maybe more of a stance, but
that's
she's not going to take
more
a stance to, like be against Israel. She's not saying like let's stop all funding going to Israel, but she wanted to end the war, get a ceasefire, make it try to get negotiations.
She's not the 40 Democrats in the Senate that just voted to defund all weaponry going to Israel. Absolutely, she's not that bad, but she did look at the maps. When she looked at the maps of Rafah, she said Israel cannot go in there. They need to stop. So if anything, she was taking a slight stance against Israel, but whenever pressed about it, she never backed it up. She never took a solid stance on anything. She would allude to sometimes.
What do you mean she didn't back it up? She did. She said that Israel had been doing too much. They needed to slow down. She did take stances.
You know what my favorite stance she took was? My favorite stance she took.
Your example was Rafah. She backed that up.
Is when her polling with black men started dipping, she promised to give federal money only to black men. And then people were like, that's real racist. And she walked that one back. So she did show some flexibility there. So that was good. I appreciated that she showed flexibility in that she was at least able to realize that open racism might not fly on the national.
She never said the word equity, though, so she moderated.
That's good. Yeah.
I mean, you guys are bragging about beating one of the worst candidates that Dems have ever had to run.
I'm correcting.
Well, you're saying she was a terrible candidate, but then Trump barely.
Revisionist history. Tom's making it talk. Tom's talking like there were like these wonderfully popular democratic policies that will just suddenly rise like the phoenix from the ashes once Trump is gone. And the truth is, when they no longer have Trump to target, it's going to be exactly the same bullshit it was before, because the Democrats have learned no lessons. They're going to do the exact same shitty nonsense they were doing previously. And just like before, they're going to be unpopular. Right now, they're just not in power, so they don't have to defend their shitty ideas. They just have to say Trump bad, and that's what they do. That's where we are right now. It's a joke to think that they're to whitewash Democrats as if they didn't do all these disastrously self-inflicted, horrible, often inexplicable policy decisions. It's the same people. It's the same DNC. They've learned nothing.
I do want to go to Tom here.
We weren't talking about defending Democrats, though.
Right. I just before you go on, I do want to say I feel like I like a lot of this is vibes based, right? And one of the places we can find vibes based stuff is like you look at comedians, and I was literally watching Cat Williams today on like a small video someone posted from one of those things, and he was talking about, he's like, we all remember Biden, and it's like, yeah, whether you like Trump or not, he's going in here getting shit done. And it does seem a little bit like revisionist history. Are we just like, do you disagree with this? Like, why are you so vehemently disagree here? But I feel like that's a pretty common perception, is that the Biden administration was inept and she was inept. I think the vibes make sense. Like, Biden got a ton of stuff done policy wise, but nobody thought so because he was old and decrepit. Meanwhile, I couldn't really tell you, other than tax breaks for people, what Trump has ever got passed through Congress. A lot of it is really just executive orders that his supporters really like to see, but obviously they're not going to last very long once the next Democrat goes into office. So they really don't mean much for the long term of the country. But I think people see him as more energetic, so they believe that he's able to get more done. So again, with the comedians and their political takes, I think a lot of them are pretty trash anyway. I understand why it's vibes based, but on an actually policy level, I think that the Trump Supreme Court has done way more than Trump has ever done himself as an individual at the presidency. I think that's probably his landmark achievement is
if your only defense for the Biden administration. Let me address Castle. You can go back to arguing with him forever. So the only. At the end of the day, the worst argument you can make for your fucking president is that another branch of government did their job, and that's why my guy is good. The executive branch is 2.2 million employees. They have a whole plethora of power. And when you ask what the Biden administration did, Congress did something. Look how great they are. Look how great he is. Yeah, they were fucking terrible. And that's why no one can actually look at executive orders he did and say they were any good. Like, you can look at everything he did on the board and know a lot of it verbatim.
You were just bragging about the Taiwan Semiconductor building chips here. That was literally the CHIPS Act that Biden helped pass. That was that was a huge part of that bill.
Yeah, I don't hate Keynesianism. I'm not anti-Keynesian, but this is legislation that comes from Congress. So
it still has to be signed by him, right?
Oh, yeah. If he doesn't sign it,
he has to approve it,
right? They can overrule him, right? So it's really just kind of celebratory, celebratory signature. That's all he really does is be a cheerleader for that shit. And the whole party cheerleads for each other.
Well, it's also this. Hold
on. Let's let Tom respond. Tom was trying to respond. Sorry,
Okay, yeah. The earlier you were saying that we were pretending that Democrat policies were defensible, but we weren't talking about whether or not Democrat policies were defensible. We were talking about Kamala Harris's campaign and whether or not she did the things that you guys were claiming, which almost none of it was actually true. Because the thing with Rafah, she did defend that. You just said that she offered to give money to only black men and then backed off that. Never fucking happened. She did.
That definitely happened. You want me to prove it?
That were specifically supposed to. Yeah, there were supposed to be policies that were supposed to target target Black communities. But that's something that literally Trump has done as well. He's literally promoted tons of policies that were were targeted towards helping Black
she
people
offered
numerously.
on her policy platform. She offered fully refundable federal loans only available to Black men specifically. Then she rescinded that because it was a very bad idea, and she broadened it. That doesn't strike you as a racist thing to do?
I have not heard of this. Fully refundable.
Yeah, that's what it was. They were
loans?
refundable loans available only to Black men. She then rescinded the policy because it was a very bad idea.
What she should have done was offer a slush fund for January 6 criminals. That would have been better.
Yeah, but look, the only reason we're on this, the only reason we got on this at all is that Tom made the point that he thought that the Dems had this secret sauce of popular policies that, they were just somehow.
Well, Ryan, I'll ask you this: you would agree that Dems do have an advantage on healthcare policy, right? I think most Americans believe that healthcare in this country should be more affordable. I think that's even like a bipartisan thing.
Well, I mean,
it's like 80% of Americans.
I think it all depends on what you ask. Like, do people think food should be cheaper? Healthcare should be cheaper? Yeah, like everyone's going to say, like,
whether or not there should be a public
I want
option
things to be cheaper,
or like single payer.
Yeah,
like how Democrats have presented it. Yeah, like the way that they present their healthcare plan is more popular than what Republicans have presented. Well, I don't even know the plan exactly.
The disadvantage that Republicans always have, and I will candidly admit this is a disadvantage because we have done a bad job of educating people about American values and American traditions, is that we don't want government solutions to these problems. We want the government to back the fuck off and let people solve it on their own. So like oftentimes you say like, oh, the Republicans pass less laws. Like, of course they pass less laws. They want there to be less laws. Like, for me, like, because like I'm a little bit more wonkish to the average person, one of my favorite things about the Trump administration is that he's deregulated something like 645 to 1. If you look at like the way that his administration has done regulation, because I want there to be less regulation. So, I mean, I think that there's certainly, I would agree with you, like a gap in presentation. And I think Republicans need to get better about messaging this and pointing out, by the way, that like when the Democrats talk about like single payer healthcare, what they are talking about is the creep towards socialism. That's overtly what they're talking about. And we can have fun with that. That can be the thing we fight about next. But I mean, I agree with you. People like cheap shit and voters like to be bribed.
A public option is not socialism. It's perfectly fucking reasonable to offer a public alternative.
The creep towards.
Oh, Jesus. That's like fucking... No, it's a government service. That's not what socialism is.
Yeah, having cops is also a creep towards socialism, guys. We need to get rid of cops. We need to get rid of firefighters. We need to get rid of all this socialist stuff.
No, not at all. I mean, you can look at the Declaration of Independence. The just purpose of a government is to secure your life, liberty, your pursuit of happiness, which includes your property rights. They should not be interfering with your life. They should certainly be leaving it up to your state and your local government to the extent maximally possible. And when the government does intrude in these ways, they are preventing the market and the people from coming up with better solutions. Now, this is unfortunately.
What is the very first word you said that they were? That the government was responsible for? What was that? What was that first word again?
You can go here if you want to, but I said life. Now,
so life, life, liberty.
When the founders wrote life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what do you think they meant? Do you think they meant that the government was going to pay you to give you bread? Is that what they think they meant?
A comfortable.
I think I know what
No, but I think that I think that the majority of like countries that like first world countries at this point have some sort of system, and we've done that as well to an extent with the ACA and things of that nature. But that the idea that like as we're more and more capable of doing these things, and especially as like there is a bigger divide between poor Americans and elite Americans, that like there becomes a more of a responsibility for the elites to possibly take care of more things for the rest of Americans, if that's going to be the case. If not, there has to be some sort of drastic overall shift change that I don't want. I think it's better to just have, a little bit higher taxes and give people health care.
Well, what you're talking about is the opposite of what the founders talked about with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You're talking about a system where the government, at the butt of the gun, which is ultimately what you're talking about, forcibly redistributes, forcibly creates a welfare state, forcibly creates social services for people against the wishes and infringing on the liberty of others. It is ultimately tyrannical in nature. And the great wisdom of our founders is that they designed a country with specific and a different philosophy in mind. Now, I agree with you that people are very susceptible to bribery. And when you give them the opportunity to vote to be bribed, they will often do so. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it just, and it doesn't make it effective. Instead, what you get is places like the UK where their healthcare service is slowly falling off a cliff. Canada, where your wait times are steadily increasing, because these systems don't actually work long term. They work short term because you can always steal somebody's money for a little while. But in the long run, what you actually need is a vigorous, energized people who are working on their own to make things better to the maximum extent possible, which is why American exceptionalism exists, which is why America's been so successful, which is why
what if we're talking about
superior.
some sort of like single payer system, but when we're just talking about a public option where you are allowed to keep your private insurance if you want, but you have a public option, that is a very different system than a single payer,
if you add up all of our spending, if you add up our state government spending, you end up our federal government spending, we are spending something like 63% of all government spending on social welfare programs. How much higher does that have to go? Like how much? How much higher?
It's single payer. They pay for it. Single payer means they all put together and then split the cost evenly regardless of the symptom. Now, that's not a lot of people if you just start the program out of the blue, but if you roll all of Medicare into it to start it off, that's a lot of fucking people.
Tyler, my sweet summer child, remember when the ACA was marketed as making things affordable, and then it turns out if you take away, it turns out it actually does require a taxpayer subsidy to keep those things in place, right? Like
these are baby with the bathwater arguments.
Well,
government can't do it. Look at Trump RX right now.
It is the nature of the government. It never stops. It just grows.
Trump RX.
Well, I want to. Yeah, you bring Trump RX. I know that Trump and Mark Cuban. I think that's going to play out big here in the future with the Trump deal and the cheaper drugs. But we'll see how that goes. But
I was going to say, even Trump is running on a public option, though. Even Trump is saying that he's going to implement these sorts of things. This is something that, even he has promised.
Well, I want to say, I think
socialist tendencies are my least favorite thing about him.
Sure, I do want to say one thing though. I feel like I think one thing has happened though, and I think even Republicans have shifted some on the fucking welfare system, right? For example, I'm about, and y'all probably heard me many times, go on many panel and be like, I don't give a shit about grandma. Let grandma die. It's not my money. I shouldn't have to pay for grandma. However, now I'm sitting here going, you know what? Maybe we should look after grandma because all this money's already been allocated for this welfare. But it seems like there's a fraud kind of issue. Like, where's the money really going? And maybe we should actually re-gut this and re-look at it and maybe try it again, because it seems like right now the system is kind of like not actually welfare. It seems like it's like a Ponzi scheme, for lack of a better way to term. Like,
fraud care.
Cost of healthcare.
Keep that fraud care.
Fraud care. Yeah, there you go.
It's cost of healthcare right now. We have a 2 million people shortage in healthcare. We need to step the J1 visa up to bring in 100,000 a year instead of the fucking 20,000 I think we bring in right now, and blow that fucking medical industry up. Bring down the wages. That's really the end of the day how you make healthcare cheaper. But I want to go after Ryan real quick. You're not an originalist. You're a revisionist. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which was changed from property, does not mean hands off. We are not libertarian. The first thing that the Congress did when they stepped in and swore themselves into oath is pass a tariff. It's a market infringement to ensure the pursuit of happiness, which is growing in your new fledgling American business. They put those in place so that American businesses could prosper from the ground up instead of have to compete against British instantiated businesses. On top of that, taxation existed. It just had representation now. On the state level, they were doing these things in mass. They even had state religions at the time. So they're there to protect and ensure your happiness.
I have bad news for you, Tyler. Why did they impose the tariff?
To protect and ensure that United States businesses could grow.
Okay. Here's a counter argument. Federal income tax was illegal.
Okay, I mean that doesn't really. So yeah, they had a different mechanism.
So they imposed a tariff because they needed some minimal funding to have a federal government. And one of the advantages of tariffs over taxes on that level and why they went that direction, A, it was constitutional, but B, the federal government at that time was correctly understood to be focused on issues of national importance, like taxes, like trade, like war, like mutual self-defense. They were not.
The Constitution didn't even apply to the states yet.
This falls under trade.
Pretty big difference.
Yeah, exactly.
This falls under trade.
Well,
when you tariff other nations, like your industry,
it does fall into trade. Exactly. So that is the sort of thing that the federal government was in the business of doing. What they weren't in the business of doing was cramming down on your personal income. So, would I take a small tariff in order to have no income taxes? Yes, I sure the fuck would, Tyler. But we're going far, far afield into my own personal philosophy, though I do like sparring with you, Tyler. Tom, you raised a point I was trying to respond to, and now I've totally blanked out. So if you want to go there, I can respond. But I've forgotten what you said. I'm sorry.
Trump even doing the single payer option?
Yeah, I think that is the last thing that I said.
Yeah,
but
with the Trump RX.
I am not a big fan of government intervention into market economies, and I think one of the things, I think the things I've criticized Trump the most for are political prosecutions, free speech issues, and what I view as his intervention into the market economy. I just don't think these things go well in the long term. You might be surprised to learn people hate our healthcare system right now. They hate it. They're so mad about it. They hate that you get your health insurance from your employer. Well, why is that the case historically? What happened? FDR intervened in the market, and it created the employer-sponsored healthcare industry. It was a market intervention. It was a market intervention because FDR put in wage caps during World War II, and companies started issuing health insurance as a way to attract employers because they couldn't offer them more money. And then the IRS declared it was tax-free, and voila, employee-sponsored healthcare overnight became a cottage industry. But it wasn't like a natural evolution of market forces. It was actually the result of government intervention. That's why I don't like it, is that even if it solves a problem today, it never goes away. It sticks around, and over time, it becomes this unnatural, ossifying thing that chokes off our liberty and makes the market function less well. So,
but the two most libertarian states right now. Two most libertarian states right now are going to be Florida and Georgia, and these are number 1 and number 2 with the most Medicare and Medicaid fraud in the entire country. As far as proportionality goes, obviously California and New York, Texas, those are as far as money wise, but proportionality wise, Georgia and Florida are committing a lot of this fraud, and I'm all for stopping the fraud that takes place. But that doesn't, the fact that people do bad things, or that fraud exists, or that the founding fathers may not have wanted this, just doesn't mean much to me. And as far as legitimate arguments go.
Well, I'm not even sure you're getting at, to be honest with you. I think fraud's a bad thing too. I also probably think
you
most
brought
of
up
these federal
fraud earlier
programs
as
exist.
One of the things that is a problem with these is that a lot of this stuff just ends up being used as fraud.
Yeah, it's hugely wasteful. There's always a lot of fraud. This is in COVID, the stats that they were coming out with, COVID money was almost 30, depending what you looked at, 30% fraud, 40% fraud and waste. There was an enormous problems with government expenditures. And even when it's not fraudulent, what we've learned is that it's vastly inefficient and expensive. And over the long term, it causes a lot of the problems that it purports to solve, even if it does have a benefit in the short term. And the best possible example of that is Social Security, which is literally bankrupting the country and cannot pay for itself. And now we want to put more tax money into, because it's a wildly wasteful and inefficient way of doing it.
It can pay for itself. They just need to fix it.
Well, but the point I'm making, Tom, is that we live in a world where every man, woman, and child can access, 403bs, 401ks, or just broad spectrum ETFs on commonly available funding systems where you can fund your own retirement. The problem that Social Security was designed to solve no longer exists. But what we are doing instead is we're taking money.
That is not true at all.
We're taking money from every single person. Yes. The issue that
the ability for people to actually work into older age is that is true that like more people are able to work longer now, but the fact that currently people make way less than proportionally after inflation today than they did back then, and the ability to have money to even save at the end of the day when 70% of people are working from paycheck to paycheck, that the idea that I turn 60 or 70 and just literally have no money and I'm not able to work and my knees have given out and that I just have to go live on the streets now or some shit like that seems to be the reason it was created.
You're flatly wrong, both about the economics. People are, in terms of what they can buy with their money, they're much better off now than they were at almost any time in human history.
In all but 4 sectors in the United States since the 70s.
If you compare the quality of life today,
not for essentials.
I mean, like it's like people are complaining that their DoorDash is too expensive when, like, you know, in previous generations they were complaining they couldn't eat. It's not the same thing.
I'm not talking about overall economy. I'm talking about for essentials, things like housing, things like
and Tom, well, if you allow me to make the point,
and we have more expenses today as well because we have internet, we have phones, we have all sorts of other things.
Let me make it break it down even more simply, right? The Social Security is a very serious and large tax that comes out of everybody's paychecks every month. You pay it all the time. You're going to pay it and pay it and pay it. Mm-hmm. Now, personally, I don't even think I'm ever going to get it. So I'm just paying it and not getting anything. But let's assume you get something. If all you did was not get Social Security tax and you went on to Robinhood and you just bought ETFs, you just bought like broad stock market ETFs. You like the zero risk ones, basically the ones that invest in the whole stock market, not individual stocks.
I use Acorns.
You would have double, triple, quadruple, 10 times the amount of money that you would have from your Social Security checks at the end of the day, because you're actually capturing the time value of money. And I learned this the hard way because I wasn't always a lawyer. I was a teacher. I was broke as hell. I had a small retirement account back in like 2006 that I was contributing to in like little tiny drips and drabs because I was a teacher and I didn't have any fucking money and I had debt. And you know what? That account now is worth like, I don't know. I haven't even looked at it. It's worth like $80,000. And I put like 10 into it. Because if you do invest in the market, you do save a lot of money over time. My problem with the Social Security system is that it denies people the opportunity to do exactly that, because we're taking money from them and plugging it into a system that is massively inefficient and doesn't work. Like, yes, you can tax people infinitely to make something inefficient still work, but why? We would be better off doing literally anything else. The difference is that they don't have access to it. The money with Acorns, with Robinhood, by far the majority of people, even if they are making money and they even sometimes are in comfortable situations, they do end up spending it. This is for the good of the people, regardless of whether or not they're being responsible. This is to be responsible for them, to make sure that they have something left over at the time that they need it. And I'm sure you agree, most people will spend that fucking money, right? Like that's true. I don't think it's a good idea to bankrupt the country to make sure that the most irresponsible people remain irresponsible.
We don't have to bankrupt the country. I never.
But
said
we are
bankrupting
the country. It is bankrupting
yes,
the country.
And they should fix it, not get
How?
rid of the entire program.
How?
You are throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
How would you fix it?
You're
more taxes?
You're able to put more funds into that.
Yeah,
you don't even have to do more taxes. Like
you could raise the age.
You know, Doge just saved us so much money recently, to where we just have so much money to dig into right now.
No, I mean, like quite frankly, like the Trump accounts, which is the thing he gets no credit for. It's really annoying me because it's like one of my favorite things he did. But the Trump accounts that he put out, where basically like when a kid's born, it creates a market account and they get $1,000 in it that grows over time that they can't access till they're 18.
Yeah, it's great.
But the parents can put more money into it. That's fucking genius, because the common objection to the kind of solution I'm proposing is that people are too lazy or irresponsible to figure out how to do it on their own. But now they don't have to. Like, they already have the account set up for themselves. All they have to do when they get a job is set up an auto debit of like $10 a paycheck. And, you know, the bare minimum of responsibility, and they'll be sitting on a shit ton of money by the time they want it. Honestly,
if you're
it's
talking
like
about
one of my favorite policies.
reorganizing it in some way, that's a different thing than just getting rid of it altogether.
Well, it would be much better because if we got rid of it altogether, instead of taking the taxes and putting it into Social Security, we could take the taxes and put it into those Trump accounts, and then you'd really be seeing people cook with gasoline in terms of their savings. In fact, I mean, you could do if you did that.
Yeah, but Ryan, a lot of this is dependent on just financial literacy. If you want to tax people less than Social Security and say put it in investments, you can't force anybody to do that. The whole reason this exists is because it's a safety net for people who now are older in life and weren't responsible when they were younger. They have something that they can rely on. You have like 43% of people rely on Social Security when they're older for 75% of their income, which is a lot, honestly. It's actually kind of concerning that many people are relying on Social Security for a majority of the income that they bring in to just stay in, housing and buy food. So I think a lot of this, it's easy to say like, yes, I think financial literacy is important. We should be teaching this in schools. We should be making sure people understand how investment works and time value of money and all that. But in the meantime, I think that relying on a private market or the stock market, where if I want to retire, if I'm in old and age, and then the 2008 crash happens or COVID happens, and now I'm screwed out of half or 3/4 of my savings, then obviously the timing is everything. So I think that Social Security at least is kind of a safety net in that regard, in two different ways. So that's why I think it's a little bit easy to say we should get rid of it. I do agree with Tom, like there should be reforms. We can raise the age, we can change how it's taxed, but I think just throwing it out would be detrimental to a lot of older people.
The problem with Social Security is that it's fundamentally doing something that's kind of stupid and outdated. Like the thinking at the time was that we were going to create risk-free retirement. You would just take the money and give it to other people. That only worked because there were so many workers to a tiny number of retirees based on the historic circumstances of the time. The modern approach to retirement is that you take risks with your money by putting it into the market. And because you take risks, it grows. The fact that Social Security is risk-free is why it's so inefficient. And as long as it's risk-free, it will always be inefficient. So I'm sensitive to what you're saying. Like, I understand that the argument about like, well, there's always going to be someone who's so irresponsible that even if you give them the account and even if you tell them just put a little bit of money into it, they won't use it or they'll spend it or blah, blah, blah. And I'm sensitive to that concern. It will happen. I just don't know that like saving the most irresponsible people from themselves is a worthy use of 22.5% of the national budget. It does seem like we should do something more modern and more effective than what we're currently doing, because what we're doing is not working. Like it just isn't working. And I don't like if not working, not.
I mean, it has worked so far. Again, you just have to make adjustments to it.
What I'm saying is it is a fundamentally bad idea, and you can put duct tape on it all you want, but like you're just going to be raising the age or raising the taxes, which people don't even want to do that. But the fundamental problem remains: there's not enough workers to too many retirees. As medicine gets better, there's going to be more and more and more retirees, and it doesn't benefit from any of the time value of money. It's the worst possible retirement system.
I think the population thing is definitely important, which is why I think immigration is important for us. Obviously, legal immigration, bringing as many people into the country legally to make up for that fact. But to your point, though, Ryan, like if we had 30 million people living on the street who are 80 years old compared to the government spending, how many trillions or billions of dollars to make sure that they're not, don't you think that cost of housing them, in other ways is going to cost the government more money, or we're just going to have to live with older people being homeless? Like, I feel like, yes, it may not be the most efficient system, but I just thinking about the other side of this, like how many people would be out of a home or living on the street at that old age, I think would even cost more money at that point now.
Or how many of them would be fucking millionaires living off their well-earned.
Are you able to turn yourself up?
Their well-earned savings. Me?
You're good. You keep getting lower.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm like moving further and away from my mic. Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah. That's good.
Talk again. You cut out for.
Is that better? Better. Test,
yes,
test.
Much better.
Sorry, I think I'm like slouching away from my mic over time.
I would still try, if you're able to, I would still turn it up about 20% or so.
Yeah, that might be a Discord thing. Let me see if I can do something about it.
I've turned you up 25% so far, but you're still hitting about like 80% on my end.
Yeah, my input volume is max, so I'm not sure if that's what the setting is.
I'll turn you up.
Well, that's fine. This is actually a good segue. Anyway, so we're about at 8:53. Let's do some closings and final thoughts here, and We'll start in reverse order.
In this gerrymander-focused conversation?
Yeah, this gerrymander focus when we move to Social Security. Wait, that's fine.
I came into this telling my chat, I said, I was like this, I don't think there's going to be much disagreement on gerrymandering here, so I'm going to start just like...
Yeah, that's fine. I thought I was...
Trump, and eventually we'll get into a debate.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes I said over the strategy, I felt like it was going to have a little bit more drastic and sided opinions, but that's okay. We play it as the balls it lies. Yeah, it was fine. It was a very enjoyable conversation. Well, let's get some closing thoughts, Tom. Why don't you start us off with any closing thoughts you have and what you got going on, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think Trump sucks. And I think that everybody agrees with me. So check me out on youtube.com/TomFulleryShow.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Mullally.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Mullally. Let's see. Tomorrow I'm going on the Horseradish to do a debate about money in politics, and I'll be taking the money in politics is a good thing side, so that'll be fun. On Sunday, I may or may not be talking with one of the leading YouTube moral anti-realist philosophers about anti-realism. TBD, we're trying to schedule that. And next week on Thursday, I'm debating Pisco on Modern Day Debate about court packing. So that'll be fun to watch. And if you want to watch me dumpster Destiny, you can find that on my channel. I had a lot of fun dumpstering him last week, so always a good time to make the little gremlin and his legions of fans angry. And if I was going to give parting thoughts,
2 days ago,
we'll talk about Social Security. This is one of my favorite topics because, and Castle, by the way, I like you. You seem like a nice guy and a very good faith guy, and I appreciate your comments. But it's always funny to me when you say like, Social Security is the worst possible system and it's so inefficient. And they go, yes, but rather than fix it, we would love to have way, way, way more immigration. And it's like, I think that just goes to show how resistant to changing the deeply broken thing is. That like, we know immigration is deeply unpopular right now, and we're going to do way more immigration to preserve Social Security rather than fixing the actual problem. But again, Castle, you seem like a lovely and good faith guy. It's nice to meet you. Tom, always a pleasure. Tyler, you were right about everything. Right about everything. It took a while to play out, but holy shit, you were right about everything. If you know, you know.
All right, well, thank you so much, Castle.
Well, yeah, it was really, I thought it was a great conversation we had, even though the gerrymandering piece of it seemed like we largely got to an agreement at the end. But yeah, Ryan, Tom, first time meeting you and talking to you, all really a great panel. I really enjoyed it a lot. I think the conversation definitely, if we want to delve deeper into Social Security and these other political issues, would love the same panel again to talk about it, because I think Tom and I were being a little misconstrued. I don't think that Social Security shouldn't be reformed at all or shouldn't be fixed. I think that there are ways to do it. I just think that you don't want to get rid of it completely. But I think that if we did talk about these things further on another panel, it would be a great conversation. I've enjoyed it a lot with you, this panel here. So you can find me at CastleGuard YT on Twitter and YouTube. I'm looking to actually drop some new stuff on YouTube soon. So hopefully that'll happen this long weekend. But yeah, thanks again, Gibbs, for having me on. And then also hope everybody enjoys their Memorial Day weekend. I'll definitely catch you, Ryan, on Horseradish's channel, because I like his stuff a lot. So I'll watch you tomorrow.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
I kept calling you Cassell.
Castle?
Yeah, Castle, Cassell. I go by Castle, but people, however they want to pronounce
like
it.
Sam Cassell, you know.
Yeah,
anyway,
basketball guy.
That's exactly, yes.
Yeah, I knew. Tyler, go ahead.
So gerrymandering, taking the take. It's a good thing. Let's just press on that fucking gas pedal as hard as we can. Accelerate through this bitch. At the end of the day, gerrymandering makes more competitive districts in a way that both sides hate. So that means it actually works. And when you eventually get down to these districts that are 55-45, one fucking issue can turn it the other way, and you can see actual big flips again. The gerrymandering just started now. The divide and partisanship's been going on. Trump's been here, 10, 11 years? It was started during Obama for Republicans. Like, it's a symptom of a bigger problem. I don't think it's the actual issue itself. It's just the one we have in front of us today. We pretend like it's this fucking, the world will crumble if we don't win the gerrymandering battle. We've had this world will blow up instance go on probably about 200 times since Trump's taken office in just the second term. And none of that has actually resulted. Most of it is fucking forgotten and moved past. Gerrymandering, good thing. I stand by it. Let it happen. This is the American way. We do not want the federal government imposing too much on the state's decision. 10th Amendment, bitch. Let's go.
Also, Tyler, the second that you
think that
switched
makes
your
any
mic,
sense?
it immediately switched back. Like Discord
Oh,
switched
wow.
it back almost immediately.
Fuck
That's crazy,
Discord. Discord is
Yeah.
the worst, man. I'm sorry.
Like
You
if
gotta
you listen
pay
back
for the
to it, you'll
nitros,
hear
man.
it. It switches like immediately.
Yeah. Well, this has been giving me a break. We're gonna be doing some other content here in a moment. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. We're probably gonna go to another panel moment. I'm probably gonna talk about some of the drama that's happened here in the last 2 or 3 days because it's been wild shit apparently. And guys, don't harass people. It's bad.
Yeah.
That's the moral of the story here.
Gibbs, if you want slop drama farming, there's better drama than mine, but watch the court packing panel that Wick put on and watch them talk about me like I'm fucking Baba Yaga for the beginning of the fucking panel. It's just them conjuring images of
Panel
me.
that I was on?
Yeah. They spent the first 10 minutes talking about how scared they were if I would show up. So that was kind of funny.
Okay. I wasn't there for the first
you weren't there.
10
You weren't there
minutes,
for that. You
so I was about to
jumped
say,
in. It's good.
I do think it's weird, like how some of these panels play out lately. Like it seems like all the panels recently are very much like closing circles, right? Like you'll have like on the conservative side, you have like one group closing circles. On the lefty side, you have closing circles. Like I feel like I've been privileged enough that I've been able to like kind of transcend that some. But it's very interesting because like you can say like something that's just like not even a really deniable fact, right? Like for example, I was like, oh, there is a conviction for fraud last week. And they'll be like, don't listen to this, Shirley. And I'm like, I didn't even make a grand statement about any of this. It's like one set of facts. Then I'll go on the conservative side and I'll say something. And then what happens is since you have like a circle jerk, all these 7 other people in the panel will like laugh at the one guy that's the opposite. And then it turns into all this other crazy shit. And like, I don't know if it's just because it's like the off period or what, but I've noticed across the bench, and I think that's feeding into this.
It's
the doxing, the hate.
Bro, try debating on TikTok, dude.
Oh yeah,
try debating on TikTok. Holy shit.
No.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I heard though, Gibbs, that you were trying to defend the doxing thing by saying that like it's just a matter of reality that people will end up getting doxed. Like you're a public content creator, you're putting yourself in that position.
This is my take, and I feel like it's pretty simple, right? Okay, one, don't go and harass people, whether it's doxing or whatever. That's bad. You need to like curate your community first of all. Second of all right, we all come out here and give political takes, right? And I feel like if you give political takes, the expectation shouldn't be that I'm not going to get doxed. The expectation should be that if I'm coming live on camera and I'm putting my name out there, whether it's a screen name or whatever, you're going to eventually be doxed. Because you're never gonna have 100% like except like fan rate, no matter what. And this idea that like you have anonymity. I can't even talk today. Anonymous. You have some kind of anonymous special privilege because you're saying it behind a screen name is ridiculous. Because I haven't forgot those years where you would say one thing online on a street interview and then they would come cancel you at your job, right? Like that was a thing like 8 years ago. And like now it's because I put Admiral Gibbs up here, I should be able to be like, kill all X race, and then I should be able to not have to worry about any repercussions. I think that's ludicrous as well, and that's breeding this like where I could be a character online. Like I think people should be true to themselves. If they're worried about saying something politically, then they shouldn't say it. But if they are not, then they're going to need to accept it.
Like I'm in favor of like internet ID or digital ID. Like I'm totally in favor of that. But in the meantime, until that happens, like the majority of like, if somebody doxes somebody, the conversation shouldn't be about like, well, you should expect this. It should be like, okay, even if I expect this, like I expect to get in a car wreck at some point. If somebody purposefully runs into me, everybody should be pointing at that person saying like, what the fuck is your problem? Not pointing at me going, what you should expect to get in a car wreck at some point. You're driving on the road with a lot of other people.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. But the issue that I'm coming up against is like, yes, there's this like, anybody can get in a car wreck, right? That's one thing. That's like acceptable risk, right? The other thing is people go, I can go say whatever I want online, and then I shouldn't have to expect any kind of repercussion. And because I used a screen name or an avatar, and I don't think that should be the case either. In fact, I think that you should have to face social justice to some extent. Now, is that doxing?
Are you in favor of digital ID?
I don't know what that would entail. What do you mean by that?
Sounds like a federal policy
where,
cramming down on you for
probably not, but like, what do you mean by that?
It's like for like social media platforms like Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, that like you would sign up with your ID, and instead of having like a screen name or something like that, you would have your name, and instead of having a cartoon character in your profile picture, you would have a picture of yourself, like that sort of thing.
I think we should just like I think we're starting to move. I don't know.
I'd have to look at more, but yeah, maybe.
For me,
it gets rid of anonymity online.
Well, I don't love like cram down solutions, but I think that people should start and are starting, by the way, to developing some antibodies to online conversation. And what I mean by that is, the less you know about somebody online, the more anonymous they are, the less you should give a fuck what they think. Like, why anybody cares what a VTuber with an anonymous name thinks about fucking anything is beyond me. Like, if you're not
totally agree.
Like part of what makes social conversation work is that you stake your name and reputation on something, right? And like, I think people should be on a sliding scale. I don't want to force anybody to be not anonymous. Our country was founded on anonymous pamphlets, for fuck's sake. Like,
that's just too utopian, though.
It's part of our tradition.
That's not how people's brains work.
It's
way too utopian. Like, people care. People, when they watch somebody, they watch them because they like them. Like, when somebody, like, when they choose to listen to somebody, they choose to listen to them because they like that person, they respect them, and then they're willing to, like, now that they respect them, they tend to respect their ideas. Like, Joe Rogan can tell people he's not an expert as many times as he wants, but because people think of him as such a great guy and they respect him so much, whatever he says, it comes with some like level of influence.
But you can't dox Joe Rogan. He told you his name. He gave you his face, right? Like,
no. I'm talking about whether or not people care about what it is that the random anonymous VTuber says. Like, I agree that you should be putting your name and your face at stake when you make a claim, and that's not the case with some random like doobie, right? But that isn't the way that people think about things. They think I like this person, so therefore I respect what they have to say.
So my issue isn't even that, right? My issue is that there has been a lot, and like I think, Tom, you're actually a good example of this, because you and we've both done IRL events, right? And so I think I know that you're going somewhere and you're putting your values, whether you're paid for your values, whether you're not paid, like you're going and you're saying what you think and you're willing to stand by it in person, or put your stuff out there one way or the other, right? I think that you
don't think I'm paid for just to clarify, you don't think I'm paid for anything I'm saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying I think. No. Whether I'm saying metaphorical.
I'm a lawyer. You can hire me and pay me to say things.
Right. I'm saying I mean the metaphorical. I mean the metaphorical you, right? Like I know that whatever you believe or why you're out there, like you're putting your name and your face and your like name on the line, right? Like, and it's accountable. And I think that our conversations, at least in my experience, I think part of the reason why we've had good combos is because, like, I know that you're not just like either a paid shill, or you're not just like some anonymous person that's just saying shit for like a content or whatever. Like, I think you, to some extent, or hopefully most, like have like a basis for wanting to say it and are willing to put that accountability on the line. My bigger issue is less the harassment and doxing, which I think is bad and going to happen anyway. And I think the bigger issue is that we've gotten to a point now online where nobody's accountable anymore. Right? Because everybody thinks you can come on, you can use a screen name, and you are entitled to like being anonymous no matter what you say. Right. And because of this, people are saying wild shit and they're just being awful and mean, as opposed to back in the day in IRL, and whether or not this is a good thing. If you said something, you might get punched in the mouth. Right. And then that was an accountability factor. Now, I'm not saying we need to go around punching people in the mouth, but I think there is like something to be said for you're putting like your name and risking your reputation, your livelihood, your life, like to some extent, and especially in the world of politics where everything is going to be tied to this. And so when people go, oh, well, I have kids. Okay, well, if you have kids and you don't want them to be blowback, maybe don't go into the political realm or expecting to just keep being anonymous. Right. Like, I think that like, and when this happens, don't go surprise Pikachu face. I can't believe they ratted me out.
I think this is everybody acting holier than thou when they engage in this shit themselves just as much. I remember just sending you a video the other day of some pretty fucking spicy shit, and you're like, holy fuck, I'm going live right now to trash this dude for 3 hours straight. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Sure, but the
my
problem
name
is that when it comes to, because anonymous people exist, this is the problem. Is that this is why I say that I am in favor of like a digital IDs, because only because anonymous people exist, that's why doxing is a problem. Because if somebody like randomly posts your fucking address, you know, on Twitter or Kiwi Farms or some shit like that, it's always an anonymous person. And they're only able to do it because they are anonymous. If they had their name and their face behind what it was they were doing, they wouldn't be doing it. But they're capable of getting away with harassment. They're capable of getting away with a ton of like racial slurs and you know, tons of like Nazi shit. Like they're capable of getting away with this stuff because there is no social accountability for these people whatsoever. And so as long as those people exist, doxing is a problem because it is the most malicious and most anonymous people who are going to go and do it.
I don't know, so I disagree with that. I completely are. Like, I would have to like look more into the ID thing personally, but like, I mean, because I'm okay with ID for voting. I don't like big government intervention at the same time.
When
but
you
like,
even look at the people that we're talking about right now, the majority, like people like JSTLK, Bug Squander, Doobie, like all of these people are just fucking anime characters or some shit. They're not, we don't know who any of these motherfuckers are. They don't have faces. They don't have names. And Queeman's the only one who does have a camera, and he only recently started going on camera.
I mean, my thing is though, like we talk about all the time how rhetoric has gotten too far. Right, like to where it's like too violent rhetoric on both right and left. Like I'm not going to pretend both sides aren't doing this, and I think the part of the reason for that is you have content creators that are mostly like anonymous or don't have their like personal info, but have their face, but they're like protected by their screen name, and then say wild shit, thinking there's never going to be any blowback. Like, and I think that's a problem. Like, right, like I'll use what's that bitch's name that the one that was on Hassan's big thing, the girl that smoked weed all
Brogan?
day. No, I'm sure. Yeah, no, the other one, Casey Trot. Yeah. So like, I remember one of the first times I was shooting, we're on. Like, I had a friend doing an interview for Casey Trot, and like I was helping do the tech issues, and we were at a pool party, and I was helping set him up, and she went on a 15-minute rant like live about like me and the two people in the background like helping him with the tech, and I'm like, okay. Like you're not going to be held accountable for this in any manner because you're like a name behind the screen, right? And later time, and so like this is like, and that's fine. You can do whatever you want, but it's like if you're going to sit here and use make extreme rhetoric and be like, oh, all white people or all white males need to die or some shit, like, you know, okay, you probably should have your fucking info blasted publicly, right? Like at some point, because like you need the social thing, but then at the same time, like there is this anonymous factor. Like why are like I don't know. I think it's like a social like this is the thing with tech is like we advance and then like laws and society kind of norms catch up after, and like. I think we're at this like phase right now where people think that everything they have this right to their anonymous.
I think we can all agree that all white people do need to die, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think ironically though, Gibbs, it's like it's antisocial. It's antisocial behavior. It's antisocial behavior on social media, right? Like saying those things. Like nobody in public is ever going to say that, but they're going to hide behind a screen or say it on their screen. It's antisocial to say any race deserves to be killed or whatever, but like, do you meet them in person? Are they really going to say that to like a person's face?
No, I will. But isn't doxing the ultimate form of like holding somebody accountable? Like, okay, you said all this wild shit. Now someone anonymous person posted.
Well, this is what I mean. I think one of the things that's happened recently that's interesting with Trump is that like I don't know, like at least for me personally, like in 2022. I was pretty gun shy about social media and the internet. I felt like it was going to be like the risk of doxing, this sort of thing. I'm a professional. Like I think technically I have stuff to lose, right? Like it didn't seem like a good idea. Over time, the norm has shifted. Like back then, like everybody wanted to have a pristine social media profile who was a professional with nothing on it. Now politicians are like talking a lot more like regular people. There's like a norm that's shifting away from this kind of like pristine produced thing to a kind of like more real thing. And I think that's good. I think it's good that like we understand that people are going to have a social media presence and that there's going to be like some acceptable back and forth and that there's going to be line crossing where someone gets so extreme that like, yeah, like, you know, they said that, right? That's fine. I just think that like as AI bots grow, whatnot, people are going to learn not to give a fuck about these people. I'll tell you right now, like whatever.
Again, digital ID. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
Again.
this is the essential difference between the right and the left, right? Where it's like, I would like the people to figure it out. You would like to have a federal solution. That's going to be a difference of opinion.
Just to be clear, the left, I see the right more in favor of this and the left more against this. I'm very unpopular for
it's
on the left, and it's only right wingers who ever agree with me. So
it's essentially voting ID. It's essentially voter ID, but online. Like, I mean, that's kind of like the same concept, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I think the biggest issue, like, really with politics in general today is like accountability. Like, I feel like people are just willing to do whatever it takes.
That is my whole thing. Yes, accountability. That's what I want. I want accountability, and I want that, like, people. It's always anonymous people who get really upset with this as well. It's always people who, like, in my chat, who are always getting really upset with, like, we shouldn't be taking away people's anonymity, and it's always the anonymous people with a letter in their profile picture. Which, it's fine that you exist that way, but I'm saying that you have to understand that I don't exist that way. My face and my name is out here, and that I do have consequences for the things that I say, and that I am now dealing with floods of people in my chat, online, who are harassing me, who are doxing me, who are putting out malicious information, who are putting out libel information, things that I could easily sue somebody for if I knew who the fuck these people were. But I can't sue any of these people, and I can't go after them legally or criminally in any way, because they are just random bots or like, just anonymous to random bots.
Well, you'll get a kick out of this. I mean, this is kind of a sad thing, but we all know old Hunter Kozak or Staxiums, right? And how he was talking to Charlie Kirk when all that shit went down. And I, just since this happened, since I've done a show semi-regularly with him recently, I have been hit up by many, many people, IRL, and they're all like, Gibbs, are you part of the Mossad? And I'm like, no. They're like, because they'll just jump from one conclusion to another. And I think this is also part of this anonymous thing. It's like people can say anything they want, like you were just saying. And then since they're saying whatever, if they have any kind of following, then all of a sudden now, like, someone else will quote that as fact, and they might be more legitimate. And like, I don't know. This is a real issue that I think is going to get much worse before it gets better. I
just think, okay, did you ever have Kyle Rittenhouse debates back when, like, all of that was happening?
Maybe, sure, probably. I can't remember.
Okay, so almost all of those debates, like whenever you talk to somebody about this, and they think that Kyle Rittenhouse was just like this horrible person who did this horrible thing, every time the debate gets to the end, and they end up conceding that, like, okay, it doesn't seem like he did anything illegal, but he shouldn't have been there in the first place. It's like, okay, that is just the and you're just saying, like, yeah, but you should expect to get doxxed, blah, blah, blah. Who cares when there are people who are actually being doxxed? Like, to focus on that instead of focusing on, like,
but I've been doxxed,
who have audiences, who have clout, who have influence, who are out here just kind of nonchalantly doxing people and then playing victim afterwards, pretending like it's not happening. These people, like, that's where the focus should be. And instead trying to, like, come in and be like, yeah, but shouldn't you expect to be doxxed? It's just like saying, like, yeah, but Kyle Rittenhouse shouldn't have been there in the first place. Like, who cares?
But Tom, I have been doxxed. I've had people call my businesses, like, ever since, we won't say which streamer I interacted with, but ever since I interacted with that streamer and they had like a blowout on me, I have been doxxed. Like, I mean, I don't know if like doxing as far as posting me on a Reddit page, but I've had people call my businesses. I've had people call my parents. I had someone show up at like one of my places of business one time, and like, which is crazy. You're gonna show up in person in Texas's fucking business. That's a wild idea. Like, I mean, like, I'm just imagining them showing up on my ranch one day, like, when nobody's around for 200 miles. Like, that's okay.
That's a mistake.
No, don't
do
that. Literally, people were making like what they called fan pages.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is,
I had them all taken down, but they were literally taking pictures of me, like, at my work or out in public and shit, and then posting all.
But I expected that. The minute I stepped into like I'm going to talk politics, I was like, I'm going to be doxxed. Like, it's just a matter of time. It happened faster than I thought it would. But at the same time, it's like these same people that are complaining are the same ones fostering these communities, allowing those people in that are doing it. And it's like, okay, well, how do you complain and then allow the people that are doing it to stick around? Like, right? Like, if you're going to complain, get rid of all of them. if you're are like going to crusade against all of them, if you're gonna do like I'm doing, I'm going, okay, listen, like I don't want to like particularly condone it. It's harassment. Harassment's bad. However, I'm also not gonna be like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Your life is an anonymous shit poster where you come on stream once a month and like go on random person's call in is over. And like I don't feel any sympathy for you. Because if you're going to go and do this, like, I'm sorry, it's just going to happen. Like, you need to take steps in advance. Like, because you are putting yourself out. This is not like driving my car. You're choosing to engage in acting. Okay, this is less akin to driving a car and much more akin to snorting cocaine. Right? If I want to rail a line of cocaine, I might get a temporary benefit in my productivity. I might get a temporary benefit in like my happiness, but at the same time, I'm destroying my body. Right? Same thing with this.
No, you're saying if you're gonna have skyscrapers and planes in the same country, it's obvious that some terrorist is gonna fly those planes into those buildings. Like you should.
At some point, it's gonna happen. Like you just like. And so I think if you really want to talk about change, we need to talk about accountability. Maybe your digital ID is a solution. Maybe it's not. Like I would have to think about that more. But like to give you a real answer. But yeah, I like when I'm sitting here hearing what like y'all are saying. Then it needs to be a culture shift and and people aren't willing to do that culture shift. They just want to bitch. Like
maybe I'm worse. Maybe I'm too much of a normie, but like because I'm just newer to the internet, or whatever. But like, what's the difference between like doxing in this space and like paparazzi in like the traditional celebrity space?
There is none. And I've asked this many times. Right? And then this is what they're going to say. They're going to say, "Oh, one's a celebrity; they can pay for security."
Well, that's true. Like,
there is a massive resources. So what? Yes, when you're talking about like a celebrity who, like for somebody like most content creators and streamers, they probably I'm full-time streamer, but most streamers probably work another job, right? If they're working their other job. And then people are showing up there taking pictures of them and then showing everybody where they work to where now this person is like more in danger of people coming and fucking with them there. They don't have like any sort of safety in the place where they're trying to do their job. Whereas like for a celebrity, they don't have another fucking job to go to. And the jobs that they go to have security and all sorts of other shit there. We can't do that sort of thing. So we're put in a much more vulnerable position where people could just start showing up to our work to fuck with us.
Yeah, no. I mean, I get like the disparity in resources, which I think is probably the biggest difference between the two, just in terms of like the practical effect. I guess it's kind of like, I guess what I'm getting at, and I haven't thought about this much. I've just been listening to what you guys were saying, but like, don't people get on the internet and start talking publicly because they kind of want to be famous? Like, isn't that like what they're doing?
I mean, it's to the point though. Like, I'll use a famous streamer I know. She and like two famous streamers. They both have talked to me. I've talked to them private, and they got some stalkers. And one of them got really violent in like a couple of their live events. And they go, okay, what do we do? Well, do we give a restraining order? Okay, well, that would make sense on the surface, but they're like, well, then they're going to have this information of where all these areas where they're restrained from, and they're going to know I'm at those areas. Okay, I can understand why that's a concern. And I go, okay. How is you, with like several 100,000 people that follow you, any different than, say, I don't know, Brad Pitt, right? Brad Pitt maybe have millions, but at some point the scale, like there's got to be a point where the scale like changes. Like what there's a term for this, right? Where it's like you go to a certain point and then this certain point's the level. Is it my number where I'm at like 6,000 followers? Is it Cutebot's level where she's like 250K or whatever? Is it Willow Moon's where she's got like 8 mil? Is it like like Brad Pitt's where it's like, almost 1 billion. Like, what is the number to where you no longer have this right to like anonymity? You know what I'm saying? Like, and
okay. So do you guys know what the biggest like fear is when people get doxxed? Do you know what like the biggest problem is there with doxing?
They're in danger.
Swatting. Swatting.
I've got kids. Yeah.
Yes, so swatting is the biggest problem, and it is dangerous. It's very dangerous, and people get shot and all sorts of shit like that. Most police departments do not consider you a celebrity, even if you have like millions of followers online. They don't think much of it. Whereas, like, if they get a call saying, "Hey, Brad Pitt's got me locked in his basement right now. You need to come in and save me." The police department's, okay, buddy, sure, good one. And they're going to hang up, right? But if they call and say, "Hey, Tom Fuller's got me in his basement right now, and he's at this address, blah, blah, blah," they're not going to, even if I've called ahead of time and said like, "Hey guys, like I'm kind of a micro celebrity online and there's people who will do this," they think, "Oh, well, he's just somebody who's just trying to stop us from figuring out his ploy to kidnap this person." person and we got to go and they'll still come in anyway. So the danger levels are drastically different for
the police departments have had
level celebrities.
Well, I mean, most police departments, because I'm actually on a list in 3 different cities for anti-swatting. Like, they have like a list that's supposed to run your name, like once it goes up, and it's supposed to.
No, there are some.
Yeah,
there are some that do that where they let you call them, but those are in the minority currently. There is not there are not protections for people out there currently who are capable of doing this sort of thing. And on top of that, celebrities do not have the same sort of problem where like our audiences have a what's it called? A something parasocial relationship, right? Where like they know us very well. They know our personalities, not like Brad Pitt. He's playing a character every fucking day. But we're on here like actually talking to our chats. They know about us. They know about our lives. They feel like it's a very one-sided relationship. And a lot of people, once they don't like you, they can very much like enjoy the fucking with your life. And especially if you're streaming and they're able to watch SWAT people just break into your house and take you down. Now they are part of the content. They're engaging with you without actually directly engaging with you, and that this is something that people get off on. So there are so many other like outside incentives that really change this sort of dynamic versus somebody like Brad Pitt, where the swatting's not going to end up in the movie.
Can I ask you a question, Tom? And you don't need to give any specifics here in the nature of this conversation. Do you live in like the city or like a suburb or like a small town or like what?
I live in the suburbs. Right outside of Atlanta.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing about this that's occurring to me is like how big or small your town might be. Like I'm thinking about like where I am at, or like where Gibbs is at. Like I think I think for either of us, like if you called the police department, like I probably know that guy, and he probably knows me. Right?
I live
in
a
little different. It's a little different.
Well, there's some truth to that. Like I have 2 residences, right? Like my primary, like where I'm at most of the time, is a residence here in San Antonio. I live in a gentrified neighborhood in the ghetto, right? But I know everybody on my street. I know all these people. I know most of my local cops that have come through for different stuff, like all sorts of events. The other residence is at a ranch where it's a town of like 18 people, and the next 2 towns, my family's been there for 200 plus years, right? Like, so like, yeah, I don't advise showing up to either one of those locations. That's a bad idea. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I live in a major metropolitan area. I'm less worried about someone getting me at the house and more worried about like if I'm doing a live stream at say like, I don't know, like the club downtown, right? And then like, oh, they try to get me or they try to like, whatever. And it's kind of like though, the point what you just said is like, we're all trying to do this as you get famous. And like, if you're trying to get famous, you already know you're going to get these crazies. Like my problem isn't less with those people. It's more of these people that think that, oh, I could be random, like pop up once a month on someone's stream, say whatever I want, and never have to have any kind of accountability. And then people go, oh, I'm so sad that I got docked. Okay, why are you why are you engaged in these communities if you know that this is something that happens all the time? Like I'll use the DGG. This is a thing that's been accused of DGG for a while. That? I don't want to like just drop people's names, but like, yeah, there's been a few that have done this. Like you bitched about them being like doxers, right? And then I see people interact with them, right? Like regularly. Okay, well, if this is something you're going to complain about, or like I have this moral and then this person breaks it and then they're like still supporting. Like it just seems very much like people have this sense of like, I can do anything and then never have to be held accountable. And the minute you are held accountable, suddenly that's the problem. Right, like, and whether it's being held accountable the right way, which would be like, I don't know, maybe people not supporting you, people go the quick route or the like fuck with them route with the doxing, and that's bad. Don't get me wrong, but there's not really anything you can do about it.
It's almost never about accountability is the point. It's almost never about any sort of accountability. It's about, but no, it's not. The people are not doxing those people to hold them accountable. They're doxing them to fuck with them, to engage with them, to have some sort of interference with their life, to show that to be able to see the outcomes of their actions and know that I did something.
But even if they're a psycho, and they're just like totally motivated from like, I don't know, malice, but like I would say most people are still like, oh, I don't like this person because X, Y, Z, right? The most like maybe if you're like Neon or something, you have these people like I'm just gonna fuck with them to fuck with them. But like if you're like one of us, most of these people are gonna be like, I don't like Gibbs because it's politics, right? They're gonna say, oh, he's X, Y, Z because of his belief on this. Then they're gonna try to hold me accountable the methods they can. Well, they can't affect my money. I don't rely on streaming to make my income, right? So how do they get you? Well, maybe we swat them. Maybe we dox them. Maybe we do it. And I think this still, like, even though it's like a bad sort of accountability, their point is to drive you off there. Just like, when Me Too was happening, they're like, oh, these guys are bad. So they put them blasted them publicly. Nobody bitched about that being doxing because it was like sexual harassment. So it's like you have this like sliding scale of
Wait, that's not true at all. There was recently like a website where women were going on and like bitching about ex-boyfriends and like accusing people of like they were accusing people of all sorts of shit. Like that was condemned like pretty much across the board with like especially the amount of what we call the private information that's being put out there, where like when I'm talking about people taking pictures of me at work and putting it out there, that is like personal private information that people are putting out there to make it to where with the parts of my life that I want to share and the parts that I want to keep private, I don't get to choose that anymore. People go and get my criminal records and start putting them out. They go and start putting out information about my roommates, about my brothers and sisters, about like all these different people to mainly either just to fuck with me or just, for whatever reason. Like I have no ability to actually like decide what does and doesn't go out there anymore.
But do you have that ability in public?
So just to be clear, and the anonymous people do. And so as long as they are anonymous and those anonymous people exist, the doxing is like a terrifying thing on the internet.
But you don't have that.
It's part of what you're signing up for is a bullshit thing to say.
By the way, I really appreciate you guys' perspective because I haven't thought about this as much as you guys have, and it's been interesting to listen to. But like circling back a little bit, one of the things we talked about is like digital ID as a solution to this problem. And I had an intuition that I wasn't in favor, but I hadn't really given it a ton of thought. And it was interesting to hear you guys talk about it. And I'm sensitive, like Tom, I'm not saying that doesn't suck. Like that sucks. I hear you. That sucks. But I'm not sure that I would like implement a national policy to protect like the small number of people who are trying to become celebrities, but haven't done so yet in a meaningful way. Like that seems like a bit like we're changing everybody's access to the internet to protect like it's a small number of people.
That's not the only reason I think there's been digital ID. As I said before,
what are the other reasons? Because that
broadly is.
What are the other reasons then? Because then I might be more interested. Because
as I said, just accountability broadly, like the fact that like people are actually when they say things online that they are putting their name and their face behind it. This is somebody like already. There's people who make like very hyperbolic claims in politics, right? Mm-hmm. And if you go and engage with that person and try to like, okay, well, let's put money on whether or not that's going to happen. 90% of the time, these motherfuckers aren't going to do it. Like the Hassans and the big creators who just really try to hyperbolize everything all the time and just put out as much bullshit, especially on Twitter, like the end wokeness and like, all of these different accounts that are just an absolute nobody, no face, no person there. But people who have no accountability for what they're saying and can literally just lead a ton of people in an insane direction.
Well, hold on, but here's my issue, right? Okay, let's just say, all right, I'm going to just say use my numbers, right? So like right now it says I have 6,778 followers. Okay, that's more than some towns, right? I don't think that. Let's say I don't know how many people live in Carson City, but let's pick Kennedy or Carson City or something, right? Small town, probably like 5,000 people, 10,000 people, right? If I were to run for office and all these people live there, and I got elected, right? Nobody would expect me to have any right to privacy if I was the mayor, right? Like they would be like, "This is the mayor," whatever. Now, if you're going to be a mayor of Buckhead, Texas, a town of like less than 300 people, right? Same thing. So my question is, right? Why, if you have like a following of 6,000 people plus, like I do, right? If I go just on Twitch and they go, "Okay, this guy expects to have his private life be private," whenever. Oh, okay, I'm still doing politics. I'm just not running for office. Why would a low-level person in politics be given no expectation of privacy? Versus somebody like me who's going and being political and trying to get bigger and trying to go out here have more of a reasonable expectation of like privacy. I don't understand how how that translate. The only reason why I think like that people have this idea is because they've gotten this social norm of, I could be, Orc Slayer 732 on World of Warcraft and no one knew who I am. And now because we've gotten into the streaming world and it's growing, people still think, that should apply to me here. I should be able to do what I want versus that's
no, it's not. Again, it is because of the anonymity. That's why, like before the internet, if you were going and like using your house phone to go make like some sort of call or you were doing
a letter to an editor, I can use a pseudonym, right?
Things.
if I used to write a letter to the editor about how much I hate the mayor of like Corpus Christi, right, Yolanda, right? If I wrote, I wouldn't have to put my real information on there, right? I could just like mail it, anonymously, whatever, and no one would bitch about that. Right.
Depends. I think most places like that wouldn't accept mail if it didn't have a return address on it. They just threw the mail in the garbage. Like that's what a lot of people did.
Yeah, your return address could be a
address. They literally did not accept them.
Yeah, but
that's not. But you just writing an editor an editor a letter is not like there's no like form of danger for anybody there. I don't know what that's supposed to analogize.
Wait, what do you mean? Like, how's that any difference in like if I wrote a letter to the editor and it's anonymous and I like say some slanderous shit? How's that any difference than if I like put up an avatar and just send that same shit?
Well, it's not a public statement. It's not a public
letter to the
statement.
editor. It's posted publicly. Yeah, it's posted publicly in the letter to the editor section.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
Well, I guess it's kind of weird. Like, isn't there always going to be some kind of like anonymous way to post things? Like, I mean, like, let's say X requires a photo ID. Like, isn't there still going to be 4chan? Like, it feels like there's going to be some method by which people can do this anonymous posting if they want to, right? Like, I've never even fucking logged into Kiwi Farms. I have no fucking idea what shit show that is. But I very much doubt that they're going to be responsible. And I mean, I guess maybe, Tom, you're saying that you want to have some kind of like sweeping enforceable mandate. But then it's like a lot of these, a lot of these websites are overseas. Like, I don't know what you're going to do. Like,
yeah, well, so one, if there was like a congressional law on this, they obviously the servers would just block websites that don't do this, as they currently do with like, websites that break IP or whatever. But even if just Twitter did this and they just decided to do it, it would at least be beneficial for the largest social media platform in the world that has the most people sitting there and making statements. Like, yes, I think, or TikTok or whatever, like these places that have large people large followings, they are very influential in people's lives. They're able to make statements. They're able to they like if end wokeness, which we know who that person is, but let's pretend we don't know who it is because they tried staying anonymous for a long time, or libs of TikTok. Yeah. Like if these people didn't ever come out with their names and they are making like, slanderous remarks about one person or another. And then it turns out that like, even if Twitter was willing to help a lawsuit, find out who this person is, but they're just using they don't
have to be willing. You can make Twitter do that. Like,
I understand.
Yeah, just as an attorney, like if you were serious about suing, and then the person is not a barrier.
Yeah, but they're using whatever it is that like blocks the IP address or whatever. Like
VPN?
These things are. Yes, like they're using a VPN. Like these are things that make a lot of this very difficult, which is something that I've been through in the past. And so there's the ability for people to literally just make slanderous claims about you, to lie, to make up a ton of shit, and they can even have like other accounts and bots and shit to make it look like all of these other people agree, which is very like effective on the human psyche, that like, oh, so many people are saying the same thing, so it must be true. There's so many more like effective ways of doing things online with anonymity. But if you have to require an ID, those bots are not able to be there unless they have fucking IDs, and they're doubling somebody who's likely already on Twitter, or the person who's making the claim isn't able to just make the claim, hoping that there's going to be no pushback on them or no lawsuits on them. Like there is real accountability there.
I mean, I think what would actually be interesting, and I'm not the guy with the deep pockets to do it, but has it? I mean, like Facebook originally had this kind of like you were yourself. Like that was kind of the market, right? You put your actual name in there, and that's how that worked. It's become kind of unpopular compared to other mediums over time. But maybe that's like a market thing. Like maybe there's like somebody who could like because for instance, like if somebody launched an X alternative that was like only for people who verify their ID, I would be delighted to use that platform. Like I'd be.
Well, that's kind of what
the
right now
Threads
with Twitter. Blue, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, well, that's kind of what Threads was doing on Instagram, because a lot of people do associate like an actual personal Instagram page with that they can connect to it. But then that never really took up, because I feel like a lot of people want to stay anonymous and say shitty things on the internet, so they don't really use that as much as like a Twitter or the alternatives. But I do agree I think that should be popular at least. But yeah, sorry, Tom, you can go.
But it's interesting, right? Because you do.
But that's what Twitter Blue is right now. If you have a blue check mark next to your name, you've sent them your ID, you verified your address, like you've proven that you're a real person, and that then they can give you the blue check mark. And people who don't have blue check marks often end up in like this other box where it's like show more, probable spam sort of section of all the comment sections, because they don't have a blue check mark. Like that. I do like the blue check mark thing. It is somewhat of a compromise there, but when we're talking about the biggest social media platforms already, tons of alternatives have tried doing all sorts of things, and they're just not capable of competing with the ones that got there first, like Facebook or Twitter or TikTok or YouTube, like all the ones who got there first. They just have the market.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not like excusing it, and like I said, I think it's bad, right? It's just like I see this happen a lot, where it's people come on and they
I'm saying you can mention it as like an addendum to say like, yes, obviously, people maybe should expect that this happened, but this is really bad. Like this is horrible. People who are doing this X, Y, and Z.
You brought up Queeman earlier, right? Like I'm like not super familiar with Queeman's content. I watched a couple, but right, he used to be like an avatar, and only recently put his face on there. Okay, and I think this kind of goes with Queeman, whatever that Queeman.
Okay,
yeah, right. He only like okay, and I'm not super familiar, but like how many of these people be like going over here having like wild takes, or they'll just be sitting here doing drama shit. I'll use Tread Logic as a good one because everybody knows him, right? I've watched Tread Logic, and he'll say something to be like, oh, this guy should do XYZ. I can't believe it. Just give the most bad fake take. And then 10 seconds later in the video, the guy will say exactly what Chud just prescribed. And then then Chud will pause it and be like, well, even though he did this, XYZ, bad, right? And then keep going. And so, and I'm like, okay, Chud's at least putting his face out there. Like, you could probably figure out who he is, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of these people that post up with this just little avatars, and they just say the most terrible shit, right? And I guess your like real ID or whatever would prevent this. But the problem is people made this a whole industry, and there's this whole like drama community that supports this kind of behavior, and which is like basically the paparazzi TMZ behavior. And so at least with paparazzi TMZ, these people have to still get licensed and shit. And I guess this is more and more going towards your point, where we need some sort of regulation on it. But at the same time, it's like, my mom doesn't want to be online. She doesn't want to be making comments. Should she have to make it be able to be like, oh, I tried Best Buy's like product and it didn't go good, and leave a review and be like Sandra and then like, or whatever, right? Or Sally or whatever.
Straight to jail.
Yeah, straight to jail. That's one thing, but that's a lot different than like, oh, I'm going to sit here and make every comment ever about somebody, and then when they get doxxed, oh, it's so terrible that this guy got doxxed. I'm like, bro, you're a drama slot streamer, and you got doxxed. I don't feel it. You're a political streamer. Like, bro, you're out here saying politics. People have been shot for this. Martin Luther King, Charlie Kirk, presidents. They all these have been shot for their political takes, and you think you are some kind of special snowflake that's never going to have your personal info put out there? Like, sorry, I just am not buying that. Like,
also, I mean,
I would guarantee I was just thinking, your first reaction to Charlie Kirk getting shot was not you sitting there saying, "Well, he put himself out there in front of a crowd."
It was actually pretty close to that. I was like, "Damn, that sucks." But I'm surprised it happened sooner.
The thing that's occurring to me now as we're talking about this is, if we look at our chats right now, how many of our chatters would be there if they had to use their real name and a picture of their face next to their comments? Some of them would, but on some level, I think kind of all what we do is propped up by anonymity on the internet, right? Like, I think a lot of people who are like, for example, like a lot of the people, like, because I was ragdolling Destiny on Monday, a lot of like the comments on my accounts have been like crazy anonymous DGGers, and like, yeah, they talk a lot of shit, but like, it's a metric, right? Like, I mean,
they're only afraid of it because of anonymity. There's people who want to be anonymous are only afraid of not being anonymous because other people are anonymous. If they have to show their face and their name, but they know literally everybody else shows their face and their name, they would no longer be afraid of doing it.
or some of them might just not do it. Is the other thing. Like I think being anonymous,
or they might be
being anonymous and having the parasocial thing is like part of the vibe of like this, weird corner of the internet that we're on. Like I think that's kind of, it's funny because on one hand, I'm sensitive to the concerns you're raising and they're real concerns. On the other hand, it's like I think we all benefit from like this. To be
fair to Tom, even with the normie standpoint, so I go out and I promote my channel a lot locally. Right? Like I have a lot of local lurkers, right? And I'll go out and these people will ask me questions about the shows and they'll be like, "Oh, I saw you on this one, whatever." And I go, "Why don't you ever comment?" And then after they give me their screen name, I'll go and see them pop up. And then I go, "Why don't you comment?" They go, "Oh, well, I don't want people giving me coming after me for my opinions." And it's exactly that. They don't want to be able to say something and be tied to it. So they just watch, right? And they're like, "Oh, and then they'll talk to me while we're drinking at 3 a.m. somewhere, right? And it's like, that's one thing. And I think that's like, there is a value in this. But at the same time, those aren't the people I'm worried about. The people that are just watching, never saying shit, are not the ones I care about. The people that I care about are the ones that go and make content, expecting never to fucking have to be called on it. And then when they get doxxed, suddenly it's Lord, bad. Like that is like, okay, cool. I don't have any sympathy because you've been making slop content, talking shit about everybody. And now that guy's, you talk shit about the wrong streamer. And now their community went and found out who you are. That you had that shit coming. Like, does it suck whenever I have a political take and I have to worry that, someone's going to come to my house? Mate, sure. But that's something you accepted when you decided I'm going to go in to this marketplace of ideas, specifically in politics. Right? Like people have been killed for thousands of years because of their politics. Why are we special? Like we're not. Right? Like I hate this idea that we're somehow special.
I don't hear many of those people complaining about it because most of those people are like hyper anonymous, whereas most of the people who are complaining about it are people like me, people like Destiny, people like Wick, people who actually do have their faces and their names out there to where they would be harassed, they would be swatted, they would have consequences. Their family, their friends, their kids, their dog, somebody's dog got shot when they got swatted.
Mm-hmm.
The cops busted down the door and the dog ran and attacked the people justly who were breaking into the fucking house, and they shot the dog. And it just turned out to be an anonymous person who was swatting them. This is dangerous shit that's happening because people feel free to get away with it because of anonymity.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm, as we're talking about this topic more and more, I'm beginning to realize the sweeping impact of the speech regulation you're proposing. This is, it's not that you're not identifying a problem. And I tend, if I'm interacting with somebody on the internet and they're using a handle and no real picture, my default approach is this opinion is meaningless and I just move on with my day. But
not everybody does that. Some people put stock in this.
Oh, I see what you're saying, but I'm just saying in order to fix this problem, as I'm understanding Tom articulated,
you can create a different problem.
The solution would have to be that we ban all internet apps from allowing people onto the platform without a central government ID, kind of like how they're doing digital ID in England. This is the solution.
No. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that, but I am saying all the things that fall under the what was the social media protection again?
203. It's 230. Is it section 230?
Yeah, maybe section 230. Yeah, that sort of thing. If you fall under section 230 to where you're not responsible for what it is that people post on your platform, but then people can be totally anonymous and they're not responsible for what they post on your platform either, then there's just literally no responsibility anywhere. So at least if you're falling under section 230, you either require some sort of ID on there, or you do take the responsibility for what's being posted.
Then they're just going to fucking dox you on WhatsApp, right? You know what I'm saying? It's if they want, if they have your info and then they have they get a WhatsApp chain and then they fucking dox you after that. It's kind of I don't know how you fix this. It's kind of
I think maybe I'm coming at it from this perspective. I'm already locally known. I was a Halo announcer before this. I used my fucking screen name as a fight name when I was doing MMA. I had some big time fights that were the guy Mike Jackson. I knocked out Mike Jackson and submitted him, right? 2 different fights, and then he beat CM Punk in front of millions of people, right? This is it doesn't take much to be okay, Admiral Gibbs, and then find out all of my info, right? And like I'm like locally known, all this shit. So like I maybe I'm coming at it from the angle like I'm already public, right? And so why should anybody expect this right when like you're not going to grant that to a mayor of a town of 300 people? You wouldn't grant this right to them. So like why do people like have this like idea that they could go online and say something and they're special snowflake whether or not it? Like I said, I don't think people should be doxing. That's more of a social norm thing. I think it's bad, but it's like kind of like I'm kind of.
It's a moral thing.
Yeah, it's a moral thing. Is at the same time, it's like I agree with you. There is you might like identify a problem. I don't know if I'm as far as Ryan saying this isn't the solution. I don't like I said I'd have to ponder it more. But at the same time, there is a problem here that is growing, and like it is putting people in danger. But at the same time, it's like is it going to take 20 years for the cops to like all be online too? Like before they care? Like, is it going to take somebody caught like city councilman's kid getting shot because they got doxxed? Like, what is like? I don't know.
Again, I agree with you about the mayor thing, but again, it is a different dynamic with a mayor than it is for people who are online. One, and then two, because there's not like an audience sitting there watching when 50 pizzas show up to the mayor's house, right? But the second thing is that like just saying that they could go to WhatsApp isn't really. It's kind of like saying like, oh, well, let's not make murder illegal because then people will just murder and not tell anybody. Like like there are the people can still do things, but there's hopefully some sort of possibility of repercussion or a higher possibility of repercussion, or it just becomes less likely that people will do it because they are afraid of consequences, or like, it makes it to where there are more obstacles for it or whatever. Like all of these things just make it to where it is less likely, because otherwise we could just say like, oh, well, Twitter and YouTube should just take it out of their TOS that doxing is against the rules because they'll just go to Kiwi Farms and do it anyways. Like, no, it still should be like an obstacle.
I mean, like I said, I don't want people to think I'm over here just justifying it because that's not what I'm doing. I think that's what some people took what I was saying and ran with it. It's just like I always had the expectation that I was going to get doxxed. I just don't know when, right?
Sure, it's descriptive versus prescriptive. You're making a descriptive claim, but as though it's prescriptive. You're making it sound like, well, you guys ought to just expect to be doxxed.
Well, sure,
okay, that is just like descriptive that you will just expect
Tom,
it.
Let's go the other way. What if? Okay, we passed your digital ID law, right? And Doobie, we now know Doobie is Richard Dawson or whatever the fuck his name is, right? And Richard Dawson's like, well, here's all these pictures I took of Tom. Like he can dox you without being anonymous.
Well, so in some states it is illegal to dox people online. You can get in trouble for it. You can even sue people, I think, in almost every state. I think there's federal laws against doxing as well. But on top of that, the even just the stigma of that would be able to stick to Dawson instead of just like some random person doxing you on one account and then going right back to their main account 5 minutes later.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the thing about it that's kind of weird is it's like there's I have not looked at the laws on this, but like I would assume it would be like blackmail. Because like if you think about like blackmail as a crime, every aspect of blackmail is legal. It's only when you combine like a bunch of different things that it becomes illegal. Like So like doxing is kind of like that, right? Where it's like you're allowed to post pictures of a public figure on the internet, but if you're doing it to like harm them or just like if you connect the dots, maybe it's illegal in some states. But that's very
it's even the same for like revenge porn. Like revenge porn is technically like when you're doing this for malicious reasons. But if you post a picture of your ex-girlfriend and you're like, guys, look how fucking hot she was. Damn, I miss her so much. Like technically it wouldn't be considered revenge porn because you're not doing it maliciously. You are posting it publicly, but almost every law requires some
I guess
intent of harm.
I guess what I'm seeing it more as though is like it's like a waiver situation. So like say I wanted to go skydiving. And a skydive company did everything right, but so for some reason the parachute didn't open and I died. Right? Before you even do this, you signed a waiver saying, hey, there's a possibility of death, even if we do everything right. Right? Like, okay. So like if I go and sign this waiver, it's the same as like if I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go into the political realm and I'm gonna start talking about politics, at some point you need, like, maybe like we should require you to sign a waiver before you start talking about politics online or something, because it's like you have to assume the risk, and like you have to be like, okay, I got doxxed. Like, I knew this was a possibility.
That's not what we're talking about, because that's not analogous. In this case, no, it's not. In this case, we're talking about somebody who purposefully put a rubber banded your parachute inside of the backpack and handed it to you, telling you it was safe. We're talking about people who are purposefully being malicious and are anonymous at the same time. We're like, this is not an analogous, because in that case, if somebody did fuck up your parachute, there are normally, even if you sign a waiver, if somebody's doing something either maliciously or even just they did something, what's the word for it, where it's either malicious or like
negligent,
yes, or negligent, that in that case, yes, you can normally sue regardless of the fucking waiver.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Hey, gents, I'm gonna dip, but it's been delightful talking about this with you guys.
Yeah, this has been fun. This has been interesting. Yeah, I see where you're coming from, Tom. I don't know. Maybe I'm more on the assume